And we're live on air. Tuesday night, FESL Omega, the Alpha and the Omega. And I'm in the 7-hole, 14 teams. I'm in the 7-hole, and we have to make sure to not, as the draft is underway, as Bob Henry is taken, Jamal Charles. Matt Waldman in the 12-hole. We won't really interfere too much with each other, and I think that Jeff Hazley is showing up. So I'm going to hand it over to Matt Waldman. And we're not going to do this like the football guy staff drafts because there's something on the line here. The mock drafts where we were actually like kibitzing, but we will comment on picks as they go. I guess Matt, since you're the one that's going to be drafting last out of the three of us, as Jeff Hazley's on the clock right now, what do you think about Charles number one? As we're jumping right in.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's pretty obvious that he's going to be the guy, especially in a distance league. So this is
Say more
that
about
type
that.
of
Tell
scoring.
everybody out there what you mean by distance league.
Well, this is a league where it's going to award bonuses for touchdowns over a certain number of yards. I don't remember what that exactly is for this league, but it's a fair amount. So, for touchdown passes, runs, or receptions, you're going to get bonus points for that. So Charles obviously is one of the premier breakaway backs in this league, and that makes him a valuable commodity. So Bob Henry starts off first with him, and
And now
I don't
Hazley's
really have much of an
agonizing.
argument.
And
Yes.
Hazley's agonizing over that second pick. And so this is a league. And you concentrate on your pick, Jeff. We are not going to let this hangout hold up the draft. This is not a mock draft. This is not
All
for
right.
fun. No fun. Serious picks.
I was waiting for Jason to make some settings changes or updates there, I guess. So.
Oh, okay. Well, then talk away. Talk away. Are you happy to see Charles go number one? Would you have taken him? Would you have greedily snapped him up if Bob didn't?
I am honestly looking at either McCoy or Peterson here, and I really have my finger on the button for Peterson. Just because I think he's a safer pick than McCoy. I think he could score more touchdowns than the McCoy, and I also think he's going to get a lot of catches this year. So I really I haven't picked McCoy in any draft this year, and I don't know why.
This happens.
So I don't know.
Honest
I
answer.
don't know.
Yeah.
Well, and I do think that one of the things that I've snagged Peterson in a few drafts. Certainly, I had him third ahead of Forte, and one of the things that persuaded me is we still don't know how good Peterson could be with a competent offensive coordinator and quarterback. We haven't really seen. Remember the 1 year he had with Favre. This could be a special season for him. So I endorse the idea of being aspirational and taking Peterson. If he catches 50 or 60 balls and he doesn't wear down like he did last year, then he could be the number one back easily. So as we wait here, just to run things down for y'all, this is a little bit of a different draft. 14 teams, 2 flexes. So it's one quarterback, 2 running backs, 3 wide receivers, 1 tight end, 2 flexes on top of that. And in a 14-team league, that is harsh. And then you have, as Matt was alluding to, some distance bonuses. This is a performance league. It tends to amplify the value of studs, or just it amplifies the value of great performances. It's also 5 points per passing touchdown, so you get a 2-point bonus for 30 or yard or longer pass touchdowns, 3-point bonus for 300-yard games, 2-point bonus for 20-yard or longer runs for touchdown, 30-yard or longer receptions for touchdowns, and 3 points for 100-yard receiving or rushing games.
And there's apparently some sort of bonus for kissing the butt of the commissioner in this league on our chat draft right now.
Yeah. Hey, FESL. No. I will say this. I hope to get that bonus too because Jason Wood, one of the OFBGs, has been running FESL since I've been in FESL.
He's done a great job.
And we used to have FESL Alpha, and then it became Alpha and Bravo. What was it last year? Alpha and Bravo and
Omega. We got an Omega
last year. Is it 3 this year or 4?
It's 3.
It's 3 still. So these are some of the most competitive leagues that we play in. Lots of bragging rights, lots of trash talking, lots of things like y'all that listen to the Audible know. How many times have I brought up for Cecil Lammey how thankful I am that he dropped Jamal Charles in week 2 of my championship season so I could pick him up. I was so generous of him, really. Todd Haley, he was Todd Haley'd. So
first thing we walked in when we had our annual meeting, Wood sees me and goes, Matt Waldman guilting me out of Ryan Matthews, in a trade, and getting to the championship game. So, that's how this league is for us. It's probably the closest thing to a local league that isn't local, that we have.
It's local as far as we're concerned, in the sense that it has storylines and grudges, it has histories, and this is I don't know why my brain. You guys know I went to fish this weekend, so I know why my brain has lots of little pinholes in it. But the English Premiership, where you get relegated if you don't do well, you get pushed down from Alpha. So we're Omega, but we're the cool kids this year.
Well, this year we kind of got reorganized, I think, more than anything.
True.
So,
I mean, as you all know out there, the football guy staff continues to grow, and there goes LaShawn McCoy. So there you go, Hazley. I thought you just gave us a big speech how you weren't going to take LaShawn McCoy.
Yeah, how about that? I don't know. I decided to pull the trigger. Why not? Let's do it.
Chip Kelly. Betting on Chip Kelly is good. Betting on Adrian Peterson is good. There goes Calvin Johnson, number 3. Now I'm coming up here at number 7. One other scoring thing that I left out is, 1.5 points per tight end reception. So, also important. I hope that Jason Wood and Ryan Hester and Adam Harstad didn't notice that. I have a feeling that at least one of them did. So I'm set up in this somewhat unenviable position here of likely seeing all 4 of the running backs go, the top 4 running backs, and then Calvin Johnson and Jimmy Graham. And I'm going to have to make a call here at 1-7. And I honestly don't know what I'm going to do.
This is one of these leagues. This is one of these leagues where you just never quite know. I mean, I think this league is fun because there's so much sniping going on with it that you really are kind of. There's times after like the 3rd round you're just like, wow, what do I have left here that I
and that's the thing
for the top.
In a 14-team league with 2 flexes, we are all going to start players that we didn't really want to start, and waiver wire performances are big. And again, the amplification of big games makes it so that in any given week, I mean, Matt, what kinds of scores were we seeing, winning scores were we seeing? You won this league last year, or you won Football Guy Staff League last year, like 250 to 300, right? I mean,
yeah, you have some really high scoring with this, but it was Norton who won it. But
Norton, I'm sorry.
Yeah, Norton won it, but that's all right. Just I think I'm over it by now. But no, they're usually it's low in the early stages, and then it gets a lot higher by the time everybody kind of gets their stuff together with the waiver wire. And Wood just takes Bloom's pick with Jimmy Graham off.
Yeah. So the choice I'm likely to have to make here, if Hester and Harstad follow script and take Forte and Peterson, which I'll that's put it on the board. Gronkowski is a thought. And I'm Bloom here. I mean, to win this league, to win a 14-team league, you're going to have to hit some home runs. There goes Forte. The other possibility here, the sort of safe play, and I may do it because I just did it, and there goes Peterson. So I was just on a show last night with Katie Drummond, covers the Cowboys. I'm going there with the Cowboys. I was asking him, because I'm worried about the Cowboys, and the team having kind of a broken spirit because of their defense, and I said, who's the Ray Lewis? Who's the guy in the locker room that is not going to let this happen to this team? And he told me, and Matt, I have a feeling everyone knows I'm taking it. I'm going to take Dez Bryant. There it is, the new leader of the Cowboys. And I think in a 100-yard game and distance bonuses, I mean, Dez Bryant, Demaryius Thomas, Dez Bryant. I just want somebody that I think that can be consistently excellent game in, game out. And normally here I might say, running back scarcity would dictate getting a running back. However, because of the performance bonuses, getting that player that is going to be excellent week in, week out, regardless of position, takes on more value. Matt, what are we hoping for here? I mean, I don't know if Bear and Andrew and Chase are listening in, so if you want to keep tight-lipped, I get it.
I am, because I'm not really sure what I'm going to take at this point. I really honestly am looking at it, and I have wide receiver on my board. I have running back on my board. Certainly Lacey was on my board at this stage. And then I even have the possibility of, maybe a quarterback or a tight end. I'm not really sure at this point.
And to Matt's point, Peyton Manning averaged 36.8 points in the system last year.
He kept me alive last year in this league. So
he was basically a 40-point player every week. Drew Brees was a 30. So the gap, I mean, I think there was normally a 4 or 5 point gap in typical scoring systems per game between Brees and Manning, and that inflates up to about 7 points per game in this system. So it's a thought. AJ Green goes to Andrew Garda at 10. And Hazley, what do you, if you were sitting in Matt's spot here, what would you do?
Let's see. Who just went? AJ Green?
AJ Green, yeah.
Green was actually my first choice, so I'll say that.
Well,
not afraid of the ginger.
I think you still have to go with. Oh, this is tough, actually. You either go with your next best running back. Ooh, Ball went. I was thinking either Ball or Lacey.
Ooh, Monty
Right.
Ball.
I was thinking Ball or Lacey. So now, Matt, I don't want to put your pick in for you here, but in my opinion, with the top 4 receivers are gone, I think you kind of have to go either tight end or the top running back available. So that's just my pick.
Right, right. And when I look at this, I see guys that I really like, and I think there's some guys that I can probably get a little bit later that I feel good about with
Right.
running back, especially after Chase picked Monty Ball. That makes me feel a little bit better. So maybe it's that me picking on the Jets flavor going on here. So we look at that, and I think that we look at this pick, and I think overall I should stop talking and probably pick the guy. Because at this stage it's probably worthwhile to do.
Don't get me in trouble.
I just think all the talk about all these other guys that are going to be playing in this league or playing on this team and getting time, it just all BS. I take Marshawn Lynch.
All about that action, boss.
Yeah.
Well, then there's the
100-yard games. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say, a lot of people, and myself included, think that Seattle is just going to run Marshawn Lynch as much as they possibly can,
right,
because they're not planning on having him, I don't think, much longer than this year, and they want to get as much as they can out of him, and in that regard, they should just give him the ball as much as possible. And
sometimes, to me, we overthink this fantasy football thing. Watching Marshawn Lynch, and I know there was a bit of a cloud cast over him with the potential holdout and Darrell Bevell misspeaking about running back by committee in OTAs. We're going to run running back by committee, and then he is the lead back. He is. It's tough. I mean, I think some people might disagree, but at this last few years, he's been playing at a Hall of Fame type level. He plays on a team with the best defense in the league, a championship team that's going to win a lot of games. Like this is what you want for fantasy football, right? Right, Adam Harstad. Adam, looking good, man. What's up, man?
Not much.
So Adam Harstad.
Like a pro.
Adam Harstad is going to be picking before and after me. So we are going to have a chance. Adam, we're going to have a chance to turn this into therapy for each of us. I mean, we can vent. We can look at each other's face. I can look you in the eye and say, how dare you take Cody Latimer in the 6th round? How dare you? So,
I'm probably going to be complaining. I think you're about to snipe Gronk from me the third time. Makes it back.
Matt Batanti takes him at the turn. 114 and 2-1. Gronk was a consideration at 1-7. He was, but I wasn't going to go there. So Adam, as you join us, just those of you who are old Yeller football guys, good old Shark Pool, you may know him as SSOG with the elephant with the tear. Very happy to have you here with us tonight, Adam. You took Adrian Peterson, so I think you have to feel like maybe you got a value, and Waldman goes with Peyton Manning. So, but first, Peterson. I mean, did you feel like you got a gift at Peterson at 6th in this draft?
Yeah, I think, I'm all for waiting on running back, but I think in a 14-teamer, you got to hit him early and you got to hit him often if there's value there.
Well, and we talked about Peterson and Norv Turner and so on. Matt Waldman, I mean, were you just biding your time, hoping that Chase wasn't going to take? That you were going to be able to snag Peyton Manning right from under Chase there?
Yeah, pretty much. In the 2nd round, I thought that works for this league very well, especially the advantage that he gave last year. And even if he turns out to be, Breeze-like from last year as opposed to Manning-like from last year, that's still, top 2 guy, probably nice advantage. And with Welker out, they're probably going to go downfield a little bit more. We might get some longer touchdowns out of the slot position with Emmanuel Sanders or Mr. Cody Latimer.
Yes, and you got to tell Zook that Ryan Clady's back this year. So if he heard something about Peyton Manning and thought he was going to get something out of that.
No, it was about Wes Welker. He came up here with Welker. That was what that was.
By the way, as I said on Twitter, don't all the stories of Wes Welker handing out $100 bills to everybody, doesn't it all just make sense now?
Yeah, I think it does. I think it does.
It's the Kentucky Derby. Those of you out there who have not read Hunter Thompson's story about the Kentucky Derby, I think it was his first story with Ralph Steadman. It fills in the blanks so that Wes Welker and all that stuff, it all makes sense. I'm coming up on the clock here at 2:08, and then Harstad's at 2:09, and Hazley's at 2:13. So I guess I'm going to hand it over to Waldman, since you're not picking again for a while. If you were sitting in any of these spots where we are coming up, what direction do you think you're going?
Well, I mean, I think if I was in your spots, and probably, what you picked at this point, what you took a wide receiver at this
I
stage.
have Dez, yeah.
Yeah, so you're probably, I would imagine that you're looking at either a second wide receiver or running back. I mean, tight end at this stage, there might be a guy that you're interested in here in the next couple of rounds. But I think that you're going to see what falls to you at wide receiver, look at the value, and determine whether or not that you feel like that it's wiser to get running back at this stage. There is, of course, Drew Brees you can take a look at and say whether or not that's somebody that you want. But I mean, I'm curious to hear what everybody thinks about Brees heading into this season, because certainly there could be more emphasis in the running game they talk about all the time. But is that just an every year, like, soon come type of situation that's never going to happen? Or are you buying the fact that now that Lance Moore's gone, the fact that they don't really have any experienced guys, in terms of Stills not all that experienced and Brandon Cook's not all that experienced, are they going to be, maybe they run a little bit more than what you would expect, and Brees drops to the bottom half of the top five as opposed to the top half of the top five?
Yeah, well, I think what's interesting about that is this idea that with Kyrie Robinson and Mark Ingram running the ball about as well as he's run in his career, and the Saints having the best defense they've had since the Dome Patrol, does that open up more game scripts where Sean Payton is content to just run the ball 40 times because they have a defense now that can be a boa constrictor. And there goes Le'Veon Bell. Now, I'm gonna go here, and to be honest, folks, this seems pretty elementary. I mean, running back might be the positional need, but I would feel, with picking in the middle of the round, I feel okay about rolling the dice on running back. And this is also a league format that has a pretty active waiver wire. So I'm going to take my chances in a tight end premium league here, and I'm going to take Julius Thomas. I think that with Julius Thomas, and Adam Harstad's on the clock. While he's making his pick, I'll go ahead and talk a little more about this one. I think that what we have here with Thomas is a player that we don't know how good he's going to be yet. Remember, last year was basically his rookie year. He's been working with Tony Gonzalez. This Wes Welker news affects him. Everybody in the Broncos pass offense gets a little tick up on the Wes Welker news. I think you could see Thomas approach 15-plus touchdowns. I think that he could go from a 3 to 5 catch a game to a 4 to 7 catch a game guy. And in a tight end premium league, I'll take him. I was hoping Gronkowski might slide, but when Gronk had to open his big mouth and tell everybody he's going to play, that wasn't going to happen. Antonio Brown, Mr. Adam Harstad, talk about why Brown there.
I was kind of looking at Brown or Jeffrey. I didn't really love the running backs. I didn't think were as great of values. I thought there were more talented players on the board. And honestly, the tiebreaker for me is I own a couple Jeffrey shares, and that's my first Antonio Brown of the year.
Yeah, I found myself, Matt and I were talking about that today. Like, I took Johnny Manziel in our rookie draft in the Football Guys Dynasty League because I just wanted to have a share of him somewhere. We're at that part where we're winding up our drafts. And Jeff Hayes
last chance.
And it's fun. And, that kind of thinking I totally encourage. That's the fun part of fantasy football. Adam, Matt had opened the floor. I didn't want to get you on the mic about this because you were going to pick. He opened the floor about Drew Brees. What's your stance? And I mean, if you want to say, I suppose it would give something away for Drew Brees. Who's that? I don't even know who you're talking about. But are you feeling Brees this year, or do you feel maybe the gap is still there because it was a pretty sizable gap between he and Manning last year?
I'm trying to think if I can ever recall an instance of a coach saying he wanted to pass more in the offseason. Right. I think every coach always says he wants to run more in the offseason, and partly because if you're running more, you're winning more. But New Orleans has won a lot of games with Brees, and they passed the ball a lot of times with Brees. I think it's been a pretty successful formula. I suppose it's possible that they could go away from that. I don't know why they would.
Yes, and okay, so this is good. Matt, Ryan Hester started Forte, Jeffrey. Does that give you any pause? Jeff Hazley's on the clock right now. We'll let him think in peace. Does that give you any pause?
None at all. If I could have done that, I would have done it. I mean, those were two guys I certainly would have targeted if I were picking earlier and knew that they would fall to me in that range. If I was in his spot, wouldn't have hesitated to do that. I mean, you're going to have two guys who are going to be targeted a lot in the red area, so it's kind of a one or the other. It would be like having Marvin Harrison and Edgerrin James back in the late 90s, early 2000s with Peyton Manning and under the center right at that point. That's what you could potentially have in this situation, so I like it.
Okay, we're still waiting on Hazley. I think maybe I should go to golf announcer mode here.
I'm going to pull the trigger, guys, on Andre Ellington.
Nice.
And,
that's a nice value right there.
That's value.
Normally,
in a 14-team league.
Yeah, I'm seeing him go as I put him in the Dominator first. Normally I go, or I'm seeing him go a little bit earlier than that, and just recently his draft stocks dropped a little bit. I think people are starting to realize that this guy kind of gets injured a little bit too often than you'd like, and we're not quite sure. There's not really any kind of we don't know. He's not proven, so I mean it is a little bit of a risk. But I like the pick here with this at this particular point in the draft. So Ellington, it is.
No, I mean he was in my top tier, at the bottom of my top tier in this on my cheat sheet for this particular league. So I'm right there with you. I think it's great value.
If this will take, I don't know why it's not taking it.
There you go. You got it. And he was in consideration. If I went running back, I have cooled a little bit on C.J. Spiller enough that I would have moved Ellington ahead of him. And Bernard versus Ellington versus Spiller it's an interesting debate. But those would be the running backs I would have been looking at if I would have went running back. So I think getting Ellington there 5 picks later would be fantastic. We got Bob Henry on the clock for 2, and then Hazley's going to be back on the clock, and then we're going to go back down through. I guess let's get some comments on Cordero Patterson. Adam, I know that you are the #1 Percy Harvin proponent. Cordero is the new Percy Harvin. Do you think that 212 is too early for him, or do you get it?
I don't. I think Cordero Patterson has to start catching the ball more before we start calling him the new Percy Harvin.
Well, that's true. I hear that. But so what do you think? I mean, do you think he will start catching the ball more this year?
I see a range of possibilities. I think it's possible that he could. I think right now he's being valued like he will. I don't really like this current price. I don't think it's really accounting for the downside. But, absolutely he's one of those guys who has the potential where you don't want to come down too hard on one side of it because he has the potential one way or the other of just making you look silly at the end of the year.
Okay, we did see Bob Henry go with the Green Bay double dip, Rodgers and Cobb. So we will see Cobb. Cobb's been an interesting guy. I'll toss this one back to you, Matt, because we're all going to be picking soon. Cobb is a guy that was never breaking into the first 2 rounds usually, but always clearly ahead of that next group of guys that included White and Floyd and so on. You were a massive Randall Cobb proponent, Matt. What do you think his ceiling is? I mean, can he be a 110 catch guy? Can he get 1,500 receiving yards?
No. In this offense, no, unless everybody gets hurt. And I'm a big fan of his ability. I thought he was a more athletic Hines Ward, in the sense of that he was, a very just physical player with that deep speed that Ward never had. But in this offense, as you can see, I mean, they like Boykin, enough that I feel like that between Boykin and Nelson, and then you have that running game, that I think that there's a little bit lower ceiling than what people anticipate for Cobb, unless somebody gets hurt. And really, even at that stage, I still have a little bit, I'm still wondering a little bit here, because I think that in this situation, I don't see Aaron Rodgers being that record breaker right now. I don't see him having that type of a season as long as Eddie Lacy can carry the ball, 17 to 20 times in a game, and I think he's going to see that an awful lot. So for Cobb, to me, he's a nice pick here maybe because of the big play element and his ability to run after the catch. But again, I would rather have a guy that they target deep like Nelson, where you're going to get the big plays in chunks, rather than targeting him on the short and intermediate routes, which they often do, and ask him to try and run it. It's going to be really pretty and exciting, but it's not going to yield the same number of points that you're going to get from a guy like Nelson going on the deeper routes.
Okay, Hazley goes with Drew Brees. So, you thought about that one for about 2.5 minutes, Jeff.
Yeah.
Tell us what was going through your gourd there.
Well, I was contemplating a receiver here, and I don't mind telling you who it was. It was Andre Johnson over Vincent Jackson. I just think that Johnson is a future Hall of Famer. He seems to have success no matter who his quarterback is. But my only question, though, is if I don't take him now, what kind of value will be their receiver next time? And I still think that there's going to be some good value at receiver because receiver's deep, and
Right.
That seems to be my strong point as far as picking receivers in drafts. So I went with the sure thing quarterback here. I like Breeze. You talked before about, well, what do we expect from him? What's his outlook this year with his oblique?
Right.
I think he's going to be just fine. I don't think that New Orleans is going to run the ball a whole as much as we hear. We hear that every year. Breeze he's just a passer by nature. The guy gets 5,000 yards a season and 40 touchdowns. That is a huge card that I can have in my hand every single week. And like you mentioned before, Peyton Manning scores 40 points a week in this league. Breeze and Rodgers are right there close behind at 30. And then then it kind of drops off from there. So I figure if I have one of the stronger quarterbacks here, and I think this is a good point to do it in the third round.
Totally.
Why not? This is one of your elite players that you can have, and I just think it's a better pick than going with an Andre Johnson receiver or a Vincent Jackson that I'm not really that high on.
And certainly Gene Bramall would be nodding and saying, good, you follow the prescription, because tiers. I mean, this is tier-based drafting. Drew Brees was the last of the elite quarterbacks, and he would have been breaking into the first of many wide receivers that are pretty much the same. I think that you can run the numbers, and at Hazley's 413, chances are the wide receiver gap is going to be much less than what the quarterback gap would be. So we saw, Adam, was Harvard going to be the pick? Bob McGaw snakes him right in front of you. No.
No.
You wouldn't have gotten him on the way back either.
Yeah, nice.
And you know what? I'm fine with that. You guys kind of forget that I'm a dynasty guy first and foremost.
That's true.
A lot of my Harvin love. And I always say, I'm not a projections guy. I'm a heuristics guy.
Sure.
I don't really have a specific number in my. Oh, Harvin's going to go for,
Right.
1,200 receiving yards and 300 rushing yards, and it's going to add up to this much VBD.
And you're also an on-the-clock guy right now, by the way.
Yeah, I'm drafting.
Oh, you. He takes. Adam denies me the chance to pull off a double tight end strategy as he takes Jordan Cameron. So this is pretty elementary. I'll go ahead and I'm happy to get C.J. Spiller in the third round of this draft. Again, distance touchdown bonuses, big game bonuses. C.J. Spiller's my guy. And I've cooled a little bit on C.J. Spiller just because of maybe like a bit of a crisis of confidence. Come on, you're right, Jeff. This interface. I'm trying to draft T.J. Spiller and it's not doing it. I'm going to try to reload here. So I guess, Matt, you can take this one because you were one of the original, not so fast guys on C.J. Spiller. Am I just too much rose-colored glasses here?
I think you are, but I like goading you about this stuff. So I understand why he could be good, and I certainly understand why you would pick him at this stage because you're not going to get him much later. And the upside that you would get if everything comes together, he gets enough carries and he's not bumped off by Jackson or Bryce Brown or even, I can't even believe I'm saying this, but even Anthony Dixon maybe at the goal line or in short yardage, that you would probably have an opportunity. At that point, he could get 250 or more carries in this offense, and if that happens, then he could have a very big season. But he's one of those guys that I'm kind of still waiting to prove it at a level that maybe he's done it 1 year, and maybe that's a little bit more of me saying, I dare you to step across this line, and then he steps across the line and say, I dare you to step in the circle, that kind of thing with him. So at this stage, I couldn't argue with anybody about him. I just still have a little bit of reservations.
Sure. Well, there's some uncertainty here because how much of it was the ankle and how much of it was the misuse. I think Evan Silva has brought up some good points about that. Chan Gailey set him up for that success in 2012. Although I still fall back on how he played when he had 1 week of rest last year and was still able to explode, and the fact that they run the ball more than any other team in the league. However, another distress signal came out from the Buffalo offense when they paid. What did they pay Kyle Orton? Did I read that right, you guys? That they paid Kyle Orton like $5 million. So I mean, if there could not be a more clear vote of no confidence in EJ Manuel. Now that being said, Spiller was fine. I mean, the quarterback play can't be worse than EJ Manuel was for most of the year last year. But it definitely takes away that running quarterback extra threat to open up some lanes for him. I don't know. Buffalo could be a disaster. Cleveland Brown fans, Matt, rejoice. That first round pick.
Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting. We'll find out. I mean, it's funny right now. Three guys I wanted in this round are gone. Harvin obviously was the first one. Well, he wasn't the first. I was hoping I'd get him on the way back in the fourth round. The first guy was Keenan Allen. I really wanted Allen. I wanted Harvin. Both guys. Allen may not be a big yardage guy, but he's going to get a ton of receptions. He's going to be I think he'll still probably be the top threat in this offense, maybe with a couple other guys in the mix as being 1A, 1B. But then Andre Johnson. I mean, Jeff talked about Johnson, but I'd say this. The reason I'm sure he was appealing to Hazley is the same reason he was appealing to me at this stage, which is with the craptastic quarterbacks that they had last year, he was still excellent and making big plays. And when you're spanking Patrick Peterson in big play situations in the fourth quarter, and he can't stop you one-on-one, and you're old, I'll go ahead and take the old guy who plays with bad quarterbacks and still scores great for you in fantasy leagues.
So, and I don't want to distract you too much. You have 3 more picks until the clock, but just real briefly, since Ryan Mallett is now a Texan, can you revisit what your thoughts were on him back when he came out of Arkansas?
Yeah, big arm, great. He's the physical marvel that people liked. He's tall, can move around the pocket fairly well in terms of physically being able to do it to avoid pressure, and he has the big arm, and he throws a beautiful vertical throw when it comes to the seam or up the sideline. He has some of the prettier throws that you would find, but the problem is that when pressure comes, his game tends to fall apart. And I think that's interesting that they have Mallett and then pick Garoppolo, and they're keeping Garoppolo because we're going to see Garoppolo didn't exhibit a lot of that craziness under pressure, but he didn't have a lot of that pressure either in the preseason. So I'm interested to see how this all plays out. But Mallett, once again, he's going to a team that, from what I remember, still has a pretty decent offensive line and still should, and has a good running game. So there might be a little bit of good smoke and mirror play going on here if he gets a start, and I think he will. By the end of the season, I think they're gonna be in a position where either they feel like they need to make a change, because I think that I think these Texans and their quarterbacks can be pretty fickle. And there could be a little bit of demand for that. If they're on the verge of missing the playoffs, they need to take some desperate measures, and they go for Mallett a little bit earlier. They'll make some excuse to get him in there.
Well, before Savage, at least. I mean, I thought we were well on our way to seeing Tom Savage at some point, which just would have been like German tragedy. Just like almost too much to bear. Speaking of Savage, Mallett, at least, I think there's a fighting chance. And O'Brien obviously knows his game and knows how to work with him. So that's an interesting late development. There, some other late developments, and that's one of the things I want to highlight as we go through this draft, or maybe some players whose stock had moved. I guess I'm going to go back to you, Adam, and ask you about Jordan Cameron as we're waiting on Andrew Garda. There's a tension. There's an internal tension in the Jordan Cameron draft stock now that the Josh Gordon suspension has been confirmed, and what's the tension is this: on one hand, he is going to be clearly the number one receiver in the offense. On the other hand, he's going to be drawing probably double and triple teams. And last year we saw bracket coverage with Gordon even on the field do a decent job of taking him away. So when it comes time to click and select him, how does that figure in? What's your stance on that, or are you taking a stance on it? Adam.
I always think it's interesting. It's interesting that we have these theories that could explain like two completely opposite outcomes.
Right.
You know, if Cameron has a fantastic year, we're going to say, oh, it's because he was the only guy in that offense. And if Cameron has a horrible year, we're going to say, oh, it's because he was the only guy in that offense. Like, how can the same thing explain? If it can explain everything, it doesn't explain anything.
Sure.
So I'm, to be honest, I kind of don't view I don't view the tougher coverage versus the extra targets thing. I just like targets. You know,
Sure.
give me targets. I don't care if they're good targets, bad targets. If the guy's getting 160 targets, he's putting up numbers.
Well, and one of the things I point out when this comes up, because y'all know I've been a Cameron supporter pretty much from day one and this year, is that every game, teams are trying to take away the best weapons. You know, all these guys we're drafting in the first, second, third round, teams are game planning to try to stop them. You know, it isn't like teams are just saying, well, we have to let Adrian Peterson get 150 yards this week. So, I mean, it's always a bet on a player's ability to overcome the obstacles that defenses put in their way. And Cameron, I think, has that ability. The quarterback may be an issue, but I do think we have, with Johnny Manziel, Matt Waldman's on the clock, by the way. I should go back to golf announcer.
I don't know, because I still haven't gotten the pick from Chase yet.
It's Vincent Jackson.
Yes, there we
The
go.
NFL,
All right.
the MFL, and I want to say I love my fantasy league, and my fantasy league is always the site that when people say, where should I set up my league? So, but I do think that you know, we're at that peak season. So
There you go. That's a good pick.
why'd you say that? Why'd you say that, Jeff?
I was contemplating him before with my last pick between him and Andre Johnson and Jackson, and I just think that you know, White is a guy who we know what we're going to get from him. I think the fact that he was out last year, injured but playing hurt, and we could definitely tell that in his game. I think that's a fluke. I think he's going to go right back to the way he was, which was a durable player, a veteran. We already know that it's Matt Ryan's go-to receiver. I'm sure Julio Jones can make plays, but when he wants his go-to guy, especially with Gonzalez not there anymore, guess who it is? It's Roddy White. So I think he's going to have a really good comeback, bounce-back year, and it's great value right now. I think it's a great pick.
Appreciate it.
He's a number one receiver. I mean, he's traditionally a top 10, top 12 receiver. And you're getting him, you know, at the end of the third round of a 14-team draft. It's like taking candy from a baby that he's been falling to the fourth round of typical drafts.
Yeah, he's one of my favorite receivers that's in the league right now too. Just because you know teams can't stop him on the certain routes that he runs that are those timing routes on the perimeter. I mean, if they know they need to stop him and they can't do it, he's like automatic in that range. He may not be the big play Julio Jones guy, but he'll nickel and dime you to death.
He'll be Mr. Third Down also now with Gonzalez not in the lineup anymore.
Right.
Yep.
Right. So
He's clutch.
we come here to the turn. Victor Cruz goes. I guess that we're in that thick tier second tier of wide receivers that are all guys that have wide receiver one upside. As we're waiting on Batonti at the turn and picking at the turn in a 14-team league. Oh man, I feel for you guys. I feel for you. He went with
I love it. I don't know what you're talking about, man. I love it.
I don't mind the turn either because you can really kind of dictate where you go with your
influence
picks.
the draft. Well, you can influence the draft. I do like that much. I like that you can influence the draft. But what I don't like about it is you have to guess at what's going to happen for the next, usually 22, in this case 26 picks.
You never liked the end piece of the bread, did you?
Never. I cut the crust off of my peanut butter and jellies too. I
See,
do
I
like the
was
burnt
always
ends.
piece.
I am now an adopted Texan, 17 years, so I do like burnt ends. Give me the burnt ends of the barbecue though.
There you
So
go.
Batonti goes with Zach Stacy. So let's go backwards in order of who's farthest from the clock because I want Matt to be able to have some clarity of thought. Adam, Zach Stacy. Now we saw in the third preseason game, Benny Cunningham starts. We've heard lots of people, observers, writers out of St. Louis say Benny Cunningham has been the better running back for all of the summer. And Zach Stacy, while he did log some good numbers, his yards per carry was sub 4, and he only had really great fantasy games when he got 25 carries. Arguably, you know, give a team that's leading a game, give a running back 25 carries, any competent running back is going to have a good game. Are you buying into the worries about Zach Stacy? Or are you looking at Batonti getting him at the 3-4 turn in a 14-team league and say he just stole one?
The yard per carry thing doesn't bug me. I looked at that with Le'Veon Bell, and if you look, historically at the comps, the rookie running backs who've gotten a huge workload at a really low yard per carry. Everybody remembers Richardson because that was the most recent, but you've got LaDainian Tomlinson, Matt Forte, Ricky Williams, Emmitt Smith, Walter Payton. Like, some of these guys had brutal yard. I think Walter Payton was at like 3.4. Ricky Williams, I think, was at 3.4. They were just bad. So the yard per carry thing doesn't really bother me. I think the fact that he got a big workload is a better positive sign than the fact that he had a low yard per carry is a negative sign. But I was never a big Zach Stacy fan because I felt like so much of his value was just opportunity. And, in the NFL, opportunity changes just so quickly.
Okay. Go ahead, Matt. We're going to say something. If you're on the clock here, you want to give us some insight into your agony?
Yeah, because I'm going to pull the trigger on somebody that probably won't be back to me, but I know that I'm reaching a little bit. But I have to take him because it's a distance league. I have the quarterback, and I really believe in what he's going to do, and that's Emmanuel Sanders.
I'm not going to get anybody I want in this draft.
I was hoping he would fall to me, Matt. Darn you.
There was no way he was making it past me for sure. Well, and again, as I said, this is somebody, Emmanuel Sanders, who's benefiting from this Wes Welker news. The funny thing is, Mike Kliss is saying the Broncos still believe he's going to play this week because suspensions aren't announced that late in the week. Okay, I don't know. And so, Matt, since it's past you, I'll give you a little more chance to talk about Sanders in general, and also why maybe you can say this is a bit crazy, but I've been saying all offseason that Emmanuel Sanders is not any really less talented than Eric Decker. Do you think that? Go ahead.
Not at all. They were. I think I had them very, very close in terms of when they came out. And Sanders was one of those guys that just kind of got disguised by the Pittsburgh offense. He got there during their transition, and he was hurt a little bit, and it could have easily been a situation where he took over more than what we saw from even Mike Wallace or Antonio Brown. Just him getting hurt was a little bit of an issue. And at this stage, I really thought about going a different route here, and there were some safer picks. Certainly Larry Fitzgerald is a safer pick. I'm going to feel safe saying that because I'm sure he'll probably be gone by the time by the time it's my pick again. But looking at the distance leagues and looking at how they're targeting Emmanuel Sanders, it just seems to me with Welker gone, now you're suddenly getting a guy who's better after the catch than Decker was. A little bit quicker, and you saw what he was able to do in the preseason, some of the flashes that they have there, and they plan to move him around a lot. When Cecil's talking about him every day in camp, saying that they're going to move him around a ton, and he's going to be very involved in this offense as kind of that do-everything guy, that works for me because that means high receptions, maybe some big plays occasionally, work in the red zone. He's a little more physical than you'd expect for his size, and he's graceful. He's good at going up for the ball. And this is a timing kind of look. I think the reason that maybe he didn't function well in Roethlisberger's offense is that Roethlisberger's more of a 50-50 guy when it comes to the deeper routes, unless the guys just run completely behind him and he's scrambled and thrown it up for, behind the defense. But Manning is straight up timing, and that's what Sanders did extremely well at SMU, was being able to catch those timing routes, and so to me it's a really good fit.
Yeah, and it's funny because Cecil Lammey way back in May, or even maybe April, was saying, hey, Emmanuel Sanders should be a top 15 or top 20 wide receiver, and at first I was like, woo. Top, but he and the narrative continued to come out that basically they knew exactly what they wanted when they signed Sanders. I mean, they had a very specific idea of why they wanted him and how they were going to use him. And when I finally, and those of you that have been with us all offseason, there was a moment when I was like, okay, and I got on the Sanders camp, and I'm going to go ahead and make my pick here, and then I'll continue with this. It was basically about, oh man, it's still not going to go through. I'm trying to take Torrey Smith here, guys. There we go.
There it goes.
And the thing is, when I ask Cease, because it's not going to be Monty Ball, who's going to pick up the slack for for No Sean Moreno in the screen game? Because Denver was just killer on those tunnel screens last year. He said Sanders, and I said, okay. So now you have Sanders as a starter. You have him in the screen game. You have him in the deep game. And the other thing that's happening is that, the third week of the preseason happens and all kinds of stuff is going on. And I really think Emmanuel Sanders had a somewhat quiet, and maybe it's because I was at the lake house and, for the second 2 weekends in a row, I was a little bit taking a break, but it really felt like for a 5-catch, 128-yard, 2-touchdown game to be quiet sounds weird. But, I mean, if you were wondering how Peyton and Sanders riffed, you found out. Adam, buddy, you take Joik. I don't know how the announcers are like, yoik bell, oi bell. You got oi bell.
Like
Why do you like Bell here? Yeah.
Oh, I own
Yiddish.
like all the Detroit running back shares in all of the leagues. I think they are going to throw uber passes to the running backs. I think there's just going to be so many targets there that I think both guys are going to be top 15 backs in PPR this year.
Yeah, I can see that, and we'll see about Theo Riddick. Remember that name. File that name away. And I think that you're right to target both of these backs at 50 catches this year. The only thing I'm a little bit worried about is that Lombardi coming from New Orleans is going to try to use all 3 running backs. Now, that being said, in a league like this where it's 14 teams and you're starting 2 flexes, you don't care. I mean, you're going to start these guys every week no matter what.
I kind of feel like the New Orleans system used 3 backs because they had 3 different backs who were all pretty good. I mean, I think Riddick, I hear good things about him, but it remains to be seen if he's anywhere near on a level with Bush and Bell. And if he's not,
Right.
I don't think they're going to shoehorn him in just to,
Sure.
just to get snaps for third
because
guy.
3 is the magic number. Well, no, and I think that the Riddick is the name to file away, not so much because I think he's going to have a big role to start the season, although I do think it could be closer to 40-40-20 than, 15 touches, 2 for Riddick. But Bell and Bush particularly get banged up. And because of what Adam said, and he's absolutely on point, that there's going to be a lot of passes to the receivers in this offense. I mean, to the running backs as receivers. And Theo Riddick is, a Reggie Bush running back / receiver type of player. He could have instant PPR punch. I went with Torrey Smith. I'll just talk about that really quickly. Distance bonus. I mean, Torrey Smith and distance bonus. That's like catnip. Although Michael Floyd, who went 2 picks later to Ryan Hester, has a similar consideration. We have the history of what the number 1 receiver has done in these Gary Kubiak offenses. I think Torrey Smith is still an ascendant talent. I think he's still only 25 years old. Still an ascendant talent. And remember, through 5 games last year, he looked like he was going to be a top 5 fantasy receiver. And then the Ravens offense disintegrated. So, got Hazley coming up. I don't know if you want to table talk too much Hazley, with Jason and Bob. Well, Bob and Jason have enough to think about. So, what are you hoping for here with 2 more picks until you're up?
Well, let's see. Who's up now? Jason is, and he has 2 running backs and 1 tight end, and he needs a receiver or a quarterback. My guess is he goes receiver.
He took Vereen.
It's a good pick. I was hoping he wouldn't come back to me. I mean, I didn't think he'd come back to me, but I kind of, was praying a little bit.
Well, and Vereen, and again, I want to say, like, in this kind of league where we're all going to go deep into our benches, 14 teams, 2 flexes, starting 3 wide receivers. Vereen, I would be more afraid of as a running back in shallower leagues where the ups and downs might hurt. In this kind of league, you play your up and down guy. You leave him in every week. You take the up and down ride. And what you hope is your ups align in a greater force than your opponent. So with that risk taken out of the picture, getting Shane Vereen in a PPR league at 4.11 is excellent. So I think it's definitely very good. And we're waiting here on Bob McGaw. So go ahead, Jeff.
I bet you Bob was hoping that Vereen was going to fall because he doesn't have a running back as of yet.
Right.
So if he doesn't take a running back, I'll be shocked. I'm looking at receiver here, obviously, because I don't have one yet, and there's one guy that stands out. We'll see who Bob takes. I don't necessarily want to tip my hat, but I've got two receivers in mind, and I'm probably looking at another receiver on the turn back.
So as we wait here, and we're getting close to the end of that big fat second tier receivers. Although the third tier has gotten bigger with some rookies coming on. He goes with Frank Gore, so he does get a running back. And I'll say this: Frank Gore will win a lot of Week 1 matchups. I would expect against the Dallas Cowboys.
Oh, Frank Gore. He takes Frank Gore. That's gone. Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm going to take my guy, who I think is. I hate to see him as my wide receiver 1, but I mean, here's a guy who had a ton of catches last year, and that's Julian Edelman.
Oh yeah.
And I think he's probably, as long as he's in the lineup as the receiver, he's going to be the number one option. Either between him, Gronk, and Vereen, I really can't put a 1, 2, and a 3 on those. So as long as he's in the lineup, I think he's their top receiver. And there's nothing wrong with taking him here if he's going to get 75 to 80 catches. So I'm going to go ahead and take Edelman and hope that another receiver comes back to me here. But I don't know. I don't want to tell you who that is.
That's fine. And Edelman, it's kind of like Marshawn Lynch, where I think that there's been some overthinking. Like, it's Tom Brady's number one receiver. Like, how's he going to get enough snaps or targets? And like you say, is it Vereen? He's the number one receiver for Tom Brady. Getting Tom Brady's number one receiver often in the 6th round in 12-team leagues, in a 14-team league with performance bonuses in late 4th. That's fine. Chase Stewart says he's bored out of his mind in this draft. Talk about my team, please. Let's talk about Chase Stewart's team, because we love Chase, and we don't want him to be bored. Those youngsters, they get bored easily with their iPhones and their computer games and everything. Adam, since he started with Monty Ball, and you are the local another Denver expert, Monty Ball, Arian Foster, and the Jacksons, Vincent Jackson and Deshaun Jackson. What do we think about Chase's start?
I think if Foster holds up, I think that's a really strong start. I think Vincent Jackson was a steal. I think he fell further than he should. I think Ball's going to be getting his. I didn't love the Deshaun pick, but I know with the distance bonuses, I get why he did it. I think the key is just whether Arian Foster holds up or not.
Right.
I tend to be on the higher end of the spectrum, not quite as high as Dodds on him this year. I think Dodds is thinking about buying a second engagement ring for Arian Foster this year. That's all. Shocking how high he's showing up in those rankings. I'm not quite as low as Dr. Gene Bramall, but I think I'm more on the higher end.
Dr. Gene's trajectory on him has been a little ominous. As early before Foster was missing practices, he's like, hey, he made it through an off-season fine. He did work out. There's no reason to treat him any differently than any other year. And then as the preseason went on and Foster was still nursing the hamstring, he felt like, well, look, if he isn't going to really be able to play in the preseason, the writing's on the wall. And that was ominous to hear from Dr. Gene. But I still find myself swayed sometimes to think of him. I think Dr. Gene said, hey, 4th round maybe is when I would start to think about him. I would still think about him in the 3rd and maybe even the late 2nd, just because how many running backs are there in the NFL that have proven that they can be the engine of an offense, perform week in, week out, do it year after year, and really be that force, even as a team was crumbling around him last year. So there's a very persuasive argument in my mind that Arian Foster is just one of those players that's exactly what you want in fantasy football. And if you want to bet on injuries happening, then you can do that, but we really don't know. So it's tough. It's a tough one. Matt, where did you fall? I don't know that I heard your take on Arian Foster much in the preseason, even though we talked about him a lot. Where did you fall on Foster in your tiers and otherwise? Like, were you more inclined on the higher end or lower end of the rankings?
I was on the higher end. I thought Gene was being fantasy Dr. Kevorkian with Foster. So I think that he had the liquid goodbye all set up for Foster's career, and he's ready to just kind of call it a career for the guy and let him ride off into the sunset with his philosophy books and maybe a TV gig somewhere. But I think he's got another couple years in him. I understand that the back injury is somewhat of an issue, but and the hamstrings and that kind of thing. But again, I like contradicting the doctor, because then he's usually right, and then he sits there with that. I don't want to say smug smile, because he really doesn't have that. It's kind of more of the innocent who me. Oh, you should have listened to me. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Why even listen to me? That whole kind of what would you say? That downtrodden, smart alecky, like, nobody really listens to me. Why should they?
Right.
When we all should have.
So, and Hazley's on the clock here as we made the turn now to the 5th round. And I do think that he's a tough player, because the outcomes. I mean, we know that any time Arian Foster starts, in leagues with point per reception, we're going to project him in the top 10 or top 12 running backs that week, every single week. It's just a question of how many weeks you get that out of him. And I think even honestly, if you only get 10 or 12 weeks of that out of him, as long as his absence comes in the middle of the season and not during the fantasy playoffs, he could still return second round value. 10 to 12 running back one games is worth a second round pick because they're so scarce. And we see Jeff Hazley, and this is where it sucks to pick near the turn because you wanted Ruben Randall and you didn't feel like you could chance that he wasn't going to fall. So unpack that pick, Jeff.
Jason just said, "Did you mean to pick Ruben Randall? That's never a good sign." Yeah, I did mean to take him. Number one, he's a receiver who's going to get a lot of yards per catch, so that's good for this particular league. He's a guy who has 9 career touchdowns on 60 receptions. He's just now coming into his own. He doesn't have to deal with Hakeem Nicks anymore, so he's going to be the primary red zone threat for the Giants. I think the Giants are going to be passing a whole lot, and he's in the NFC East. So there's a lot to like about him. And I could have gone with a Marcus Colston. I could have gone with a T.Y. Hilton. However, T.Y. has the same bye week as Julian Edelman, so I didn't want to necessarily handcuff myself there. And I like Randall, and I think that he's going to be a player who could potentially really kind of rise into that top 25 before we even realize it. We're going to be like, oh, wow, did you guys notice that Ruben Randall's got 4 touchdowns heading into week 6? So, I mean, he's just that type of receiver that I think is going to be a good addition. As a wide receiver 2, I'm not loving that. I wish he was my wide receiver 3, but, hey, I've got some strong core elsewhere.
Right, and I do want to take a moment out to say that sometimes the best trash talk is talk that you didn't intend to be trash. So, well played, Jason Wood, who's on the clock right now. I'm coming up next after Harstad's coming up next. 2 picks, and then you're up, Adam. You don't have to divulge more than one name. Who do you have a name that is in lights as your top on the board, or do we not want to? And I totally understand what you say. I want to see who Jason and Ryan are. It's hard. We've been doing these hangouts, guys. I'm sorry. We've been doing these hangouts. Jeff can back me up on this. We've been doing these hangouts and these mock drafts, and it's good because we can speak freely. It's a mock draft. It's for illumination. And then I catch myself and I remember that we can use this for intel. So I won't say that. I'll ask this, Matt Waldman.
Yes.
If you had a pick coming up, now we're at that part of the draft where you can even say like, hey, 8 picks, someone could fall. So now what are we going to talk about?
So why don't we talk about picks that we either liked or we didn't like?
I guess so, but I don't want to be mean. What about? Let's talk about Bob Henry taking Toby Gerhart at the turn there.
That's an interesting pick. I mean, I think that it's one of those picks where you can see the upside with him because he's going to get the ball an awful lot. They're probably going to want to be somewhat ball control in some respects, and he is, he's terminally underrated. He's seen as like some people. I think they take one look at him and think he's some bulky fullback that happens to be a tweener that plays running back when he's a lot more nimble and quicker and fast than what you would expect. And he's a very good receiver out of the backfield. So I do like the pick in that respect. I just hate the Jacksonville offense. I don't think the game scripts are going to work well in his favor. And I personally wouldn't have taken him here, but I understand the logic for it, and looking at Bob's team, I mean, I think that's probably where talking about how that fits into what his strategy is. With Charles, he probably was looking for that second steady guy, and Toby Gerhart's going to get a steady number of carries. He may not have a huge upside, but I think the floor is high enough that if you've already gotten Witt and Cobb and Charles and Rogers, Bob, to me, is kind of coloring in the lines in this particular draft, and I'm not going to judge Henry, who does extremely well in a lot of leagues. So if he's good at coloring within the lines and making it nice and neat, then I can understand why he's making this pick.
Yeah, and I'm going to be coming up here. I've got my picks pre-selected. And we will see what Adam does. See, I'm all twisted up here because I'm just too trusting. I was just about to say who some of my top picks were, but I'll say
my guy queued up. Okay. I have to worry about Hester. Here's my guy.
Okay, as we're waiting for our answer, and Jason Wood goes with speaking of coloring in the lines, Marcus Colson, totally solid pick. Going back to Gerhardt really quickly, what's been interesting, and Adam takes someone that I was
My
definitely
pick.
yeah, well, it's my pick too. We've had
All
this
right, there
conversation.
we go.
Hold on, I'm on the board, but I need to reopen. Who did Hester take, you guys? Because I didn't see that one.
Decker.
Oh, okay. Well, then I'm going to go, and in a draft like this is good. This is sort of the put your money where your mouth is thing. Where look, in a draft like this, you have to take the players that you should not get hung up on ADP. You shouldn't be getting hung up on ADP anyway. But see, my live draft room is not loading in Chrome, you guys. Hold on. I mean, you have to go and see this. Matt, I'm just gonna hand the mic to you. You're the MC while I try to get this going.
That sounds good. So let's go ahead and talk about, Jeff. How about you tell me about a couple of picks that you really liked in this round and why?
Well, I kind of like the Ray Rice pick. I don't just kind of like. I really like it. I think we're kind of selling Ray Rice short a little bit, and the reason why he wasn't necessarily as good as he was last year was because of that hip injury. And if he's past that, then who's to say that he's not going to be the Ray Rice of old, where we used to take him in the first round or maybe even the second round? But I mean, heck, last year, even in a down year, he had over 50 catches. Yeah. So I mean, right there's your Shane Vereen with rushing yards that you can get in the 5th round. It's almost like being able to take Shane Vereen right here, and I would be all over that. So in that regard, I think that Rice he's gonna get a lot of catches, number one, and two, he's gonna have the rushing yards also. So sure, he's not playing the first 2 games, and I think that's another reason why people are a little bit, all right, I'm not gonna take him now. I won't be able to start him until week 3. And then there's also the case if something else happens, a DUI or whatever, then what's going to happen? Is he going to be suspended for 6 games, 8 games? So there's a little bit of a thought process there, but at the same time, you're thinking, wow, what if we are in week 3 or week 4, Ray Rice has a huge game, and we're like, what in the world? Why didn't we see this coming? So I like that Ray Rice pick, and I'm running my mouth here. Ben Tate, that's not a bad pick there either, especially
went through. I can't tell.
Sure, there we go. So let me ask. Let's hear from the Broncos' mouth and talk to Adam about Ray Rice, because certainly I love the Ray Rice pick as well. I mean, I think that what I really want to know, Adam, is that when you took your pick in the 4th round, were you thinking, I hope to get Ray Rice in the 5th? Were you kind of thinking about maybe taking him as early as the 4th? I know, I looked at him in the 4th round and thought maybe I should take him now, but I got a little seduced by the distance scoring with Emmanuel Sanders and thought I'm going to take my chances with this because I'm a little bit more of a wide receiver guy and feel like I can get value at running back a little bit later on.
Well, the 4th round, Rice was never in play because I was looking at Joik Bell in the 3rd round, and so when Joik fell to me in the 4th, he was always going to play there. But I kind of came into the draft hoping to hammer the running backs early because especially in a 14-team league, that scarcity is just crazy, and especially in a league where we can start up to 4 of them a week. I just wanted to get at least 3 bell cows early. And I think they've kind of been sliding. I really liked Ben Tate, too. I was surprised he slid as far as he did with all the recent positive.
And then Tate, I mean, I want to call some attention to Tate because this was a pick that I didn't necessarily – I had Ray Rice ticketed for that pick, and I think that Ray Rice and Ben Tate are both cases where universally a vast majority of the fantasy football world bought into the negative narratives on both guys, and there are negative narratives. There are negative narratives on just about every player in your draft, and it allowed us to not to discount too much the clear signs of his fit in the offense, of the team's devotion to the running game, and that they. At least for this year, he's going to start the season as the guy and get that chance, and it's just a question of health, honestly. Because they have a defense and they have a good line, so they just need to keep games on the right script for Ben Tate and Terrence West. I mean, we know, and I say this because we're going to all step on. You guys are all going to step on my head to get him. So it's not like any secret that I think that. Well, I'll ask this actually. I'll ask this. Since you brought it up first, Adam, if you drafted Ben Tate, would you be looking to pick up Terrence West or Isaiah Crowell right now?
No.
Just neither.
Yeah. Uh,
Nice. Good answer. This is why we
I'm
love
not,
Adam Harstad, by the way.
I'm not a big fan of handcuffing, especially if you have to reach a couple rounds to
Okay.
do it.
In a draft
if
like this, let's say, Adam, if it's a 14-team draft with 20 roster spots, so the waiver wire is going to be thin, and you drafted Ben Tate, and you felt like you had to take one.
If it's the 16th, 17th round and one of them's available, yeah, I'm gonna grab him.
But you have a preference. What I'm trying to get at is there a preference? Is there any preference?
Probably West. I wouldn't really feel all that excited about either. I prefer, if I'm going to handcuff, I prefer it to be a clean situation.
That's fair. That's very fair. We're waiting here on Andrew Carter. We're going to have the Matt Waldman, a couple of picks coming up.
Carter Reed, actually.
Okay. Oh, I'm sorry. There's Jordan Reed. There's Kendall Wright. Now Waldman. Waldman's on the clock. You love it. You love it, Jordan Reed. Why? Why, Adam?
I've been hammering Jordan Reed all offseason. People don't realize his per-game numbers indistinguishable from Keenan Allen's. At the tight end position, rookie tight ends always start so slow, and everybody's so excited about Keenan Allen. When Jordan Reed was putting up identical numbers as a rookie tight end, and I know the concussions are scary, they're extremely scary, but man, that upside, especially in a 1.5 PPR league for tight ends, that's just massive.
Yeah. Oh, Morris Jones-Drew. So,
Matt's just like admiring his pick, sitting back.
Yeah. And there goes Andrew
Rice.
Luck. So, for everybody out there who took Maurice Jones,
No, he is no Ray Rice, and thank goodness.
So Matt obviously thinks that Maurice Jones-Drew has something left in the tank, and also the Oakland offense. What do you think about that, Matt? Talk about Jones-Drew.
I think after they beat the crap out of Derek Carr, he will be checking down the Maurice Jones-Drew early, often, and always. And Jones-Drew does show a little something left in the tank. I like the play. I like the plays that I saw against the Green Bay Packers. I think he shows that short area quickness. He's lost the weight. Last year, people didn't know this, but he weighed 250 pounds last year. 250. Wow. Yeah, he was 250.
That's a tight end.
Yes, in a little body.
5'6".
That's a little man in a great big coat. Yeah,
you're back on the board. You're back on the board, Mr. Waldman.
All right. Well, I'm waiting for that to catch up. So let me see who we. Oh, they took a little Sankey. So let's go ahead and get the green tea guy off of here. So
you're on. I'm sorry, you're on deck. Yeah, you're on deck. Okay. By the way, we were talking about. I had Pat Fitzmaurice on the couch. Great fantasy writer. With, 4 for 4 in the Fantasy Girl, and we were comparing the fantasy season to an amusement park, and particularly with the way that you can eat things when you get there that make you puke when you're on the ride. And he compared Bishop Sankey to the deep fried Twinkie. So, I feel free to take that one and run with it. That could be his new nickname, the deep fried Twinkie.
Oh, that's definitely that has legs.
And Matt, you'll like this. Well, you're on the clock. You're going to be on the clock here, so I don't want to distract you too much.
Yeah, go ahead, because I think I know who I want.
Okay, the nickname that he came up for in that same vein for RG3 for Robert Griffin III was the corn dog, and I thought that's actually pretty. That has layers to it because I can see RG3 as a corn dog in more ways than one.
What? I'm not sure I understand that one.
He's a corny guy. Have you seen his sock collection?
Is he like Clinton Portis like?
No. Clinton's kind of more George Clinton like.
Exactly. He's more of a space cadet. Although I still contend, while we're on the subject, Coach Stanky, Coach Janky Spanky and Southeast Jerome and so on. I think all that stuff was a very finely crafted distraction so that nobody else on the team really had to take too much heat on Wednesdays when he would do his little act. I thought it was brilliant. Of course, I love all the nonconformist players, so I dug it.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I love those guys too. I made my pick, but apparently we're having a little bit of an issue at this height.
So who's the pick? I mean, obviously nobody can take.
So the pick that we are getting, I am going with the tight end.
Yep.
And I am going with Ladarius Green because I believe that when it comes to, I honestly think that he is going to be the number 2 receiver in this offense and a big play option, and they're going to be running a lot of 2 tight end sets. So that's kind of where we're at.
Okay. So, Matt,
Yes.
what do you say to the concerns about Green's usage?
I don't care what people think. I mean, it's like I mean, seriously, I just look at this. I look at this and I think, why are you going to have concerns? Who's their wide receiver? Malcolm Floyd? Seriously,
Sure.
Malcolm Floyd? You're going to look at him and say, yeah, Malcolm Floyd is going to be a 1,000-yard receiver this year. Maybe if Keenan Allen gets hurt, Danny Woodhead gets hurt, and Phillip Rivers gets his hand chopped off, and they have to go with another quarterback, and he favors, Malcolm Floyd. I just don't get it. You look in the preseason and watch what they're doing, and they're finding ways to get Ladarius Green split outside. He's going to be used often as a wide receiver. He is the West Coast version of Hernandez in the sense of how they're going to use a player. So to me, you can sit there and talk, Chase is doing his banker lawyer thing with Greg Olson being a fabulous pick over here, and it is a fabulous pick, by the way, Chase. It's a good one,
blue chip,
but it's that
chip.
very blue chip. He's a very blue chip kind of guy. I'm a little bit more flaky when it comes to like taking chances and risks. So to me, Green is that upside pick that I know wasn't going to get back to me, and that's why I like picking from the ends, because it's like, you know what? If I listen to ADP, I'm not going to get anybody that I think is worthwhile, is
right.
the value that I want them at. So it gives me an excuse to say, screw ADP. I'm going to pick who I want to pick within this range and go from there. So that, for me, Jones-Drew, Ladarius Green, I think Jones-Drew has enough left to break some big plays, but more than that, he's a great receiver, and I think that he's got another year left in him. And while I liked Zach Ertz as an option and Greg Olson as an option, I'm not sure that in either of those offenses, I think Ertz could get crowded out a little bit, and his upside might be kind of hurt by even the likes of Brent Selleck or Jordan Matthews or Darren Sproles, or even though I would say Ertz is the safest bet. And then with Olsen, you have to hope that the team is like, that Benjamin does enough to draw double teams, because nobody else on that offense is going to draw.
And that's my pick, by the way.
There you go.
Right on cue. Tight end run is we've had 5 out of the last 6 picks as tight ends. I've got my Julius Thomas, and certainly, I may miss out on one of my upside tight ends by not taking him here. Kelvin Benjamin was almost the pick at 5'7" when I took Ben Tate, and I took a calculated risk that he would fall to the 6th pick, because I did expect, honestly, that a tight end run was coming, and I was going to try to take advantage of the fact that I didn't have to worry about being on the wrong side of that tight end run, and everybody else did. And we've talked about Kelvin Benjamin a lot on the show. Adam, I continue. I want you to get your. Do you have your pick in?
Yeah. Not thrilled with grabbing my 4th running back this early, but yeah.
Pierre Thomas. Okay. So go ahead. Not thrilled. So you're not thrilled, and yet you felt compelled to do it. Lay on the couch here.
One of the things I've been saying this offseason is that a common mistake in fantasy drafts is that people try to fill out their starting lineup. And the whole myth of filling out your starting lineup is it assumes that you have 0 busts through 8 rounds, which, name one draft in your history where you've had 0 busts through 8 rounds. I'm still drafting starters in the 12th, 13th. I'm trying to replace all the scrubs that I drafted earlier without realizing it. So I think, I'm trying to get the best player available regardless of positional need or not need. And it helps that I'm able to start up to 4 a week if these guys all do pan out, but I'm pretty sure that at least 1 or 2 of my backs before now is just going to flame out spectacularly.
Yeah. No, and I think you're absolutely right to point out that you shouldn't draft to fill out a starting lineup. You shouldn't check off boxes. And also, just in general, the roster you end your draft with is probably going to be only 60 to 75% in common with the roster you have by like week 5 or 6. If you're really playing fantasy football, So there's no reason to be rigid in your thinking there. I'm so excited to have you on, though, Adam. I can ask you about some of these players because we've had Jeff on the mock drafts, and people get to listen to me and Matt talk every Thursday, among other times. But what about Kelvin Benjamin? I mean, I just continue to talk myself more and more into Kelvin Benjamin. I'm curious, would he have even been a consideration there? Where do you stand on him at this point?
He's still a rookie. It's still a run-first offense. I could see, it wouldn't surprise me if he had a decent year. I wouldn't want to bet on it.
Now we are waiting here. I believe we saw Fred Jackson go, and Fred Jackson goes to Ryan Hester. There goes Russell Wilson. Matt,
Wood's
you
a
already
believer.
Yeah, and I get it. You basically and by the way, Jason Wood takes him over Nick Foles. Wood the Eagles honk. He's not on the Nick Foles train this year. But I guess this is another opportunity for you to sing your praise, sing your paean to why Russell Wilson can win leagues for people this year.
Yeah, I'm sure people are sick of that, though, but we'll go ahead and give it one more look, which is, I mean, here's the deal. I mean, you look at this and you got to understand that without Percy Harvin last year, without Sidney Rice for half the season, and with an offensive line that was kind of makeshift for much of the season, Russell Wilson still was a top 12 fantasy starter, and he was a top 12 fantasy starter as a rookie, and really a top 5 guy down the stretch. So if you add Harvin back into the equation, you see the development of guys like Doug Baldwin and Jermaine Kearse who are continuing to grow into the role, even Luke Wilson. Then you have to understand that now with all the components in place and drafting guys like Paul Richardson and Kevin Norwood, where they want to expand this passing offense because they do understand that they're not going to have this defense signed forever with all the personnel that they have. And Marshawn Lynch, I mean, this year, maybe next, probably just this year. So that means they're going to have to continue to grow this offense. And another 25 yards a quarter, that's a lot. But again, if you look at it from that standpoint, and he's a 4,000-yard passer, you have to understand that Percy Harvin could account for 25 yards a quarter in this offense. And they seem to be able to throw at will in the preseason right now. Everything looks like that this is going to develop into a situation where Russell Wilson can be at least a top 6, top 7 quarterback.
Yeah, and I steal from you a lot. Well, I don't steal because I give you credit, Matt. But you said something 3 or 4 months ago that stuck with me, this idea of Wilson's fantasy career trajectory and NFL career trajectory resembling Ben Roethlisberger. And there was that point when they took the shackles off and said, spread your wings and fly, kid. And Roethlisberger didn't quite hit, top 5 fantasy numbers, but he got fantasy numbers that going into that year were saying, well, is he going to pass enough? And this is the character of their team. But you could see in his early years that he was good enough to do a lot more, and you can see that with Russell Wilson too. So, I think it's going to be I do think that Russell Wilson could be one of those picks that we see in common on a lot of winning teams if he's given that kind of responsibility. Let's see what else we have going on here. As Jeff Hazley's going to be up for his pair of picks. He actually gets Justin Hunter, and now we see the other rookie wide receiver that's climbed up the board, Brandon Cooks. No, Sean Moreno goes before Lamar Miller. What do you think about that, Adam?
I think it's the smart call. I think they signed Moreno because they didn't have that much faith in Miller. I think Moreno's injury set him back a bit, but I think the plan all along was for Moreno to be the guy, and I think as he gets healthier, I think he will get the larger share of that workload.
Yeah, and I mean, maybe the right answer is neither of them because of that situation. Yeah. But Matt, what's been your approach to the Miami backfield?
Avoid. I mean, I'm not a big fan of Moreno just because I am worried about the injury factor with him. Though maybe again that may be a just kind of a false belief. But
right.
I just don't trust Moreno, and I just feel like that this is a type of a situation where there's probably going to be a little bit more of a split going on. And I just see this team throwing enough where he's a good PPR pick, and at this stage of the draft, in a 14-team leagues, at the end of the 6th round, I get it.
What do you think of Damian? Give us your quick scouting report on Damian Williams.
He's fast. He's strong. For a smaller guy, he's kind of compactly built, so I wouldn't call him necessarily small. But he's been one of those guys that if he can be a little bit more confident about how he hits holes, and that's something that you can learn, he's a little more confident with that, he could be a factor, in a couple of years because he has the athleticism that you're looking for. But I would say that he's not an immediate type of guy. I think what happened here, my guess is that Daniel Thomas just fails to impress year after year after year, and the fact that there's a little spark here with Williams that they decide let's roll the dice with him here.
And a very savvy pick by one Jeff Hazley, certainly somebody that would have been in consideration for me in this round. Heath Miller. And what I like about Heath Miller is you're basically getting Jason Witten or Greg Olson with more potential for touchdowns. I think he's a better pick than them, honestly. And I think this could be a real coup. And then you took Justin Hunter. And Justin Hunter being one of those picks that it's time to get in and get your upside guys. So add a little flair, Jeff. These last two picks, Hunter and Miller, well done.
Yeah, well, I like Hunter because it seems like he's the go-to guy for Tennessee right now in the red zone, especially inside the 10. And he's the kind of guy who could be this year's Josh Gordon. He's got the ability, the talent to do it. And we never thought that Cleveland would produce such a strong producing wide receiver. Who says that Tennessee can't do it? I think it all has to do with ability as far as the receiver is concerned. And Hunter is that guy who he's shown that. And he just hasn't had the right opportunity to really be the man, and I think that he's getting more to that point. As for Heath Miller, you know that I like him. I know you like him as well. I just think that people are forgetting about him this year, and here's a guy who could catch 60 catches and have like 7 touchdowns, and that's a strong tight end. Yeah, that's a floor.
I think 80 and 10 touchdowns is totally within range for him.
That'd be awesome.
I don't think that's a stretch at all.
I'm all over that then.
Yeah, and it's because he and Roethlisberger are simpatico, and if Roethlisberger's running more no huddle, and it's more just kind of do your thing, Ben, then the thing that he will do is often going to be Heath Miller, who's going to look a lot better than he did last year too.
Yeah.
What happened?
My man was gone. Travis Kelce.
Well,
early too.
And he was definitely in consideration for me at this pick, without a doubt.
Yeah.
And look, folks, you have to try to beat each other to the punch in a draft like this because, Kelce, there's we could tell some stories about, well, this is why Kelce isn't going to amount too much. But there's an upside of Kelce to get close to where, Jordan Cameron. He's the kind of player that creates like a landslide of value and opportunity. Like if he flashes the way he did in the preseason in the first few games, Andy Reid, well, I don't know, Matt, or should we be worried about Andy Reid, or do we know enough about Andy Reid now to say, hey, look, if that's his best pass catcher, he's going to use him.
Yes, that's exactly it. He's going to be, and they know this. They're trying to get him in as many first-team situations as they can right now, and they have not pursued another receiver when they probably need one. So they're relying on Kelce, and to me, I wouldn't be at all surprised. A bold prediction would be I wouldn't be at all surprised if Travis Kelce outscores Rob Gronkowski this year.
Yeah. Well, he has breakaway speed. He has breakaway speed that Gronkowski doesn't have.
Yes, he does, and he's also not in an offense that can where there's a lot of other guys, and he's not wearing a brace on his knee, and he's also hasn't had a broken arm, an infected arm, and and back issues and a leg issue.
He did have microfracture surgery. In fairness, he did have microfracture surgery,
but no brace.
While the tight ends are going off the board, I got to just jump in here and get RoboCop cannot violate the 3 directives. I have to. I'm on principle.
I think Cameo should be playing in the background as you say that.
Word up.
Yeah.
It's the code word. Yeah. So the tight end run continues, and this is get him while you get the chance. Adam, you take Mike Evans. Now Evans has been unlike Benjamin and Cooks. Evans has not been generating buzz, and maybe this is an arbitrage opportunity where you still have a starter, you still have great skills. Why'd you swoop in there?
Distance bonuses.
Nice.
I might as well get in a little bit of that action.
Okay,
hey,
now
we've
I
got
really
Hester.
wanted Wayne, but Wood's stolen from me.
Yes, from the, and this is almost like Matt Waldman's from the void. You look ghostly. You look like you're speaking to us from the hereafter. Ryan Hester. Let's
who's
recap.
from there? Who's looking ghostly?
That's me. I need to turn on a background light.
There we go. Awesome.
We're gonna get a little background light going. It's all dim at the Hester house right now. We had to put the baby to bed, so I'm a little late, but I am drafting.
Yes, the baby needs a new pair of shoes. So
let me fix this light situation.
Cool. And while he's doing that, we can go over his draft. And I can also say Ryan does something really neat that has always been kind of not so much a pastime of mine to do because he'll actually put some numbers on it, but it's something I think that's really fun to think about. And we've all been there where, it's going into the Sunday night game or the Monday night game, and I'm up by 10 points, and I have Justin Hunter, and they have Ray Rice. And Ryan will actually, we call it FF Bookie. He will actually give you odds. Say I think you're 60% winner. You're gonna, with Justin Hunter plus 10 versus Ray Rice tonight, you're a 60% winner. And it's just fun to think about it because I think we all have come to these things. So if you're not following him, Ryan Hester 13, I think there may be a weekly column in the offing too. So it's fun. It's just fun to think about. Like, what are the odds that I'm going to win with these configurations? And speaking of odds about whether you're going to win or not, Ryan Hester starts with the Cleveland double dip, which got some compliments. Matt Waldman said he would have loved to started with Forte and Jeffrey, Keenan Allen, which I know was not. You're stealing all Matt Waldman's players here. Michael Floyd, Eric Decker. So interesting there, and one thing I want you to address is
my Bizarro team this year.
Right? 4 wide receivers in the first 5 picks, Ryan. And then also you get Fred Jackson, and you are the one who denies both Matt and I from Travis Kelce. So give us some overview of your team and some thought behind those picks.
Sure. For me, starting with Forte was pretty easy. My strategy all year, all preseason was kind of to do, there's 4 top running backs. If I can't get one of those, I'll try to, put them together with, bailing wire later.
Mm-hmm.
But and then, even after picking Forte, it then was always going to be in a kind of a running back 2 by committee situation. Might be a slight overreaction to last year and how things rolled, with a lot of running backs busting and getting hurt. But, to me, it just seems like with the way the league is going in passing, there's just so many good receivers. And with PPR leagues becoming so much more common, I just want to dominate on the receivers and then at the flex position and figure out running back 2 later. As for the Chicago start, there could certainly be lesser offenses to have 2 players on. So.
Right.
I'm pretty happy about the Mark Trestman duo that I got there. I almost even took Martellus Bennett just now instead of Travis Kelce, but I decided 3 might be too many, and Kelce's upside was really good. Sig, you've been talking about Kelce and singing his praises now for a few weeks. I now own him on, I think this is my 4th team where I own him, so boy do I hope we're right. Gronk Jr., I actually own him and Gronk in a league, so that's fun.
Oh, nice.
And
just really quickly on Kelce, I want to put an exclamation point on this for everybody out there because I have been a strong advocate of drafting Kelce maybe even a round or 2 before we normally would. And Matt and I, it seems like every offseason we have a player or 2 that when we talk in February, we'll say, have you seen Cody Latimer? And the other one will just laugh. And Travis Kelce was definitely one of those guys last year. We just had to wait a year. If he hits because of the situation and because of his talent, he could hit massively. And of course with that lower bar at tight end, that just magnifies how he could hit. Matt Waldman made one of his picks, and I'll wait. You got clarity on your next pick, Matt, or do you need some time to think?
I need a little bit of time to think. So
Okay.
Go ahead.
So, and he took Steven Jackson. We'll see how he goes in another direction here. Ryan, I guess I'll give you another sort of wide open question here. As you've been watching the draft, anything that stood out to you, picks you liked, picks you didn't like, picks that surprised you, a player that you were watching really closely to see where they fell, because now we've had months to deliberate on this and we're at the moment of truth. What are your thoughts as we're nearing the 100th pick of this draft?
Yeah, kind of on the spot, but I noticed Matt has been picking, a few guys that even he has admitted have been early. But his strategy is sound in that, when you're on a turn or close to a turn, you better just get your guy because it may not come back. I did, however, I kind of thought Ladarius Green might make it back, but with this tight end run, it showed that Matt was probably right and that he might not. I like the Sanders. Right. Yeah, exactly. I mean,
I want to just jump on that point for 1 second. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, tight ends went after Ladarius Green before Matt picked again, and that pretty much it just wiped out that tier of tight ends. So that's picking at the turn, and Matt anticipated correctly. Sorry, go ahead, Ryan.
No, that's a perfect point. I mean, and then I guess also the Russell Wilson kind of going early among quarterbacks. He seems to be gaining a lot of steam. I mean, I took him. I usually never pick before 11th or 12th, quarterback in a 12-team league. I took him, I think, as the 8th quarterback in a league last week. I'm really warming to him, so hopefully, I forget who took him here, but hopefully they're correct.
I think it was Woodrow.
Yeah, for me in another league, I hope he's right for my sake. So, those are a few things that stuck out. Stafford lasting as long as he did till the beginning of round 6 was pretty surprising as well.
Yeah, Stafford's Matt Batanti took him at the 5-6 turn, and your 300-yard bonus and your distance touchdown bonus. You're especially with Golden Tate now, who can give you another threat that they haven't really had. And by the way, I want to take this moment out while I'm on the subject to say, kudos to Ryan Broyles, man, made the team. And this is a guy now that has come back from 2 ACL tears and an Achilles tear, and that was a tough wide receiver quarter to make. And I also want to say for the deep dynasty players out there, Corey Fuller made the team. And while I'm waiting on Matt Waldman, I'm going to go Matt Waldman here and give everybody a little scouting report on Corey Fuller, brother of Kyle Fuller, first-round pick of the the Chicago Bears this year, and he's a track guy who clearly has the speed, has some game in the air, but was somewhat raw on the physical parts, the more rugged parts of the wide receiver position. Worked his way on the practice squad, and by the way, and it's so awesome that they've expanded practice squads from 8 to 10 players. All these players that are getting demoted to practice squads, it's far from the end. Far from the end. So Matt Waldman, you got WAGE, the oldies, playing all the hits. Maurice Jones-Drew, followed by Steven Jackson and Greg Jennings. Is this senior fantasy football or fantasy football?
Well, can't you tell?
2011 all.
I mean, there's no of that hair dye for men, whatever they call that stuff that going on around here. So yeah, I mean, I like Jennings. I certainly think that they got to throw the ball to somebody, and I know that Cordero Patterson is one of those options, but they also need a reliable route runner in this timing offense that Norv Turner likes to run. And I can't think of a better guy that Norv Turner is going to get a chance to use in this setting than Jennings. I don't know. I mean, in the past few years, who has Norv Turner had that is as good of a route runner as Greg Jennings? I mean, in San Diego, he fell on his face all the time because they couldn't get a good route runner. So. I think Matt Castle's chemistry with Greg Jennings. We'll see how long Castle holds off Teddy Bridgewater, but Jennings was excellent with Castle last year, so it's a good start. And really, you want that momentum. You want that momentum out of the gate. And Teddy's good. And if Teddy comes in, Teddy Bridgewater is good on those timing routes in the middle of the field.
Absolutely. Yeah, so I think that things that have happened since the beginning of the preseason only really help Jennings. I think that whole offense, we could be underestimating how big the pie is going to be from that Norv Turner offense. Since Chase Stewart just took Mark Ingram, I've got a couple of texts here from Chase that I want to read. Okay, first one's for you, Matt. He says, "Hey, Matt, how do you like my Sammy Watkins pick? Now, how's that for a banker lawyer? Am I right?"
Well, I would say that is very much banker lawyer, considering that he was the top wide receiver in this draft. Right. I mean, come on, front runner, come on. I mean, this is now if you went dark horse and went Cody Latimer or you went somebody like that, then I would be impressed. But yeah, Chase, I mean, come on, that's like picking the recruit out of Harvard, for your law firm, and saying, how do you like that?
Yeah, so it's totally a banker lawyer pick. Come on, Mr. Manhattan. Come on, Mr. Manhattan.
You don't even know yourself, young man.
Exactly, but that's okay because he's young. He's still young. He'll always be young in my mind, at least, and hopefully in his mind. Kendall Wright and Olsen. Is this a Guppy league? Olsen was tight end 7 last year before Carolina lost every wide receiver they had. Fantasy #FantasyNinja. So watch out for those throwing stars.
Chase is drafting the 2013 All-Stars.
Yes, he is. So, and I'm going to see if I'm up to my pick yet as I continue to refresh. I'm doing the classic manual drafting because the live draft room was a bit of a bucking bronco tonight. So we're getting around here to pick 100, and again, as we wait for these 3 picks, here I am, even with my total open out in the sunlight, I feel like I don't want to say much because we're at that point in the draft now where everyone's boards are going to fan out. And it's funny because you might take someone in the 8th round that was going to be there for you in the 11th round, but someone that you might think is going to be there for you in the 11th round can go right in front of you in the 8th round. So this is where you have to take stands on players and not really worry too much about ADP and timing picks. This is going to be interesting. Recently off the board, and Matt, you were part of a tier of, there were some other players like Anquan Bolden, Mark Ingram, again, Jeremy Maclin, and then we saw some upside plays, Terrence Williams, Golden Tate. We haven't talked that much about Golden Tate on the show this summer. I'm curious, I guess, Ryan, since you just joined us, what's your stance been on Golden Tate? Like, are you getting him on a lot of teams? Are you finding yourself higher or lower than the norm on him? What do you see in the crystal ball?
It's interesting. I have him in our staff dynasty league, and I was excited when he signed with Detroit. I said, that means, he's going to have a better outlook, probably produce better. As the offseason's gone on, though, I'm kind of cooling on him. I don't know how great he's going to be. I guess he's probably a solid PPR wide receiver, 3 maybe. I don't have him cracking the top 20 by any mean. I just don't think that there's a real high ceiling there for him.
Matt, I gotta hear you weigh in on Golden Tate, just because he's a player I know with your affinity for Seattle, and plus you've been watching him since Notre Dame. I mean, I think you have a pretty good handle on him, and you also have been watching a lot of Matthew Stafford. So how do you see these two, peanut butter and jelly or peanut butter and mayonnaise?
I think it's peanut butter banana. I think that's kind of where you got to go there.
Good, it's pretty tasty.
Yeah. See, there you go. See, I think you look at it and it would seem like peanut butter and jelly, but this offense is kind of the jelly might very much be the running backs in the situation, as Adam discussed earlier tonight. And so there goes the Devonta Freeman pick of I'm smarter than you, Steven Jackson owner, which I always love. Like after that, because I'm just laughing because I'm going to be laughing last, I believe, in this particular situation, especially with the young gun there. But still, you look at Tate. And I think that he's such a good receiver in tight coverage, and I was surprised by that at Notre Dame because he was one of those guys. He's one of those exceptions to the rule when it comes to catching the football with his hands. He was one of those guys that always tried to trap the ball a lot in college, but when he absolutely had to attack the football, he could do it. And so that was something that was kind of a bit of a how would I put it? It was kind of an exception there, and he's continued to do that in the league. He's, that Russell Wilson trusted him an awful lot as a rookie, throwing the ball up for grabs there, and we know that, or at least from what I've seen with Matt Stafford last year, everyone talks about his mechanics, and they try and nitpick all these things that didn't make a bit of difference for Brett Favre, who had the Team Tebow throwing motion at 40 in the NFC Championship game. Note, he was in the NFC Championship game and a 3-time MVP, throwing worse than Tim Tebow in terms of mechanics and form, and Stafford is also that exception to the rule. And so as a result of that, what you're looking at is a guy who's going to be able to target guys at will into tight coverage, and they didn't have that second receiver who was capable of making that big play in the key moment, oftentimes in various points of this of the fourth quarter. And I think now they have that guy that if the opposing defense is double covering Calvin Johnson, then you can target somebody like Tate and he can make that tough catch for you. And now we've got some guys off the board, including Darren Sproles with Justin, and of course Sigmund Bloom can't wait any longer to pick the guy that he has been hot and bothered about all season long, Cody Latimer.
Yeah, someone name dropped him. Well, and actually, this is once we're out of the top 100 players, I'm going to take Cody Latimer. And I've made the impassioned case for him enough on this show. But the Wes Welker suspension is the last straw. I mean, if he's as good as everybody thinks he is, including me, then you can't how are you going to keep him down on the farm after that?
Right.
And I wouldn't be so emphatic about Cody Latimer if he wasn't in the most productive pass offense in NFL history. It doesn't. And I'm probably colored a little bit by the Julius Thomas experience last summer when we were really pushing Julius Thomas hard. And I usually don't do this. So please, you guys, everyone out there, you've been with me, some of you, for 9 years. I try not to do this too much. But we were talking about Julius Thomas before he was even drafted by Denver. I mean, he was a player that clearly had some special abilities. Again, the basketball player abilities, the blocking out, the ball timing the leaps, and otherwise he looked like a natural, and it just took 2 years for him to get on the field. But whenever I would bring up Julius Thomas last year in the preseason, the response always was, well, how is he going to get targets? How is there going to be enough there for him? And I mean, there was enough there and then some. And even if Peyton Manning regresses down to 45 touchdowns, loses like 1/5 of his production, if he regresses down to 4,500 yards, remember Cody Latimer was already ticketed for a red zone role on this team. I don't know. Someone brought up a really good point, too, that Peyton hasn't had that chance to throw to big receivers. And now that he's got a taste of it with Demaryius Thomas, watch out. And Cody Latimer gives him that big receiver. He gives you a huge margin of error. Matt, I want to revisit a conversation. And I made the trade, Matt, by the way. I made the trade. So I want to revisit a conversation that you and I had about Devontae Parker and Cody Latimer. And just in general, Cody Latimer compared to the receivers that are in the college game. I'm in a league where you can roster college players, and to get Cody Latimer, I had to give up Devontae Parker and a first-round pick next year. And I really like Devontae Parker, Louisville, Teddy Bridgewater's main man last year. But in the end, it felt like, Matt, we came to kind of a conclusion that Cody Latimer is a special player who's probably, maybe outside of, I don't know, Amari Cooper. I'm not sure you would think of it. Who in college right now is a better prospect than Cody Latimer?
Nobody who's coming out this year, in my opinion. So I would say that people really like Devontae Parker, but I think Devontae Parker is a guy who avoids contact early in his routes right now, and it's something that can be fixed. But he's not someone who's going to immediately be that physical player that you need to be physical. You need to be that physical player in the NFL. You need to be able to attack the field vertically and be able to use your hands and feet to get into a cornerback and then get around him rather than try to take the path of least resistance. And that's what he's doing right now. And I think that that's something that's going to need to be worked out a little bit. It's a very common thing for a lot of new receivers who need a couple of years to adjust, even if they're great athletes. The thing is that Cody Latimer doesn't need to do that. I mean, Latimer is someone that is going to use his strength and be able to make those big plays. And so I look at the receivers in this offense, in the college game right now, and while I haven't seen everybody at this stage, and I have a lot more to look at, I will say that Latimer to me is more ready from a physical standpoint. And it's one of those deals where he would probably be starting on a lot of teams right now, but they have such a wealth of, they have riches, an embarrassment of riches at wide receiver for this team, and a lot of guys who, even if you wouldn't call Andre Caldwell a rich, riches, you would say that he's a veteran who understands this offense and that, Peyton Manning feels comfortable with, and comfort is really the thing that you want. When you're looking at being a wide receiver in that offense, he wants to be confident in the mental approach that these players have. So I look at this, and I don't think there's a receiver who has that combination of skills who is coming out this year that we know of, or even could be that possibility.
And from a fantasy perspective, that will land in a Peyton Manning offense for at least a year. I'll ask you that. This came up in the conversation we were having, Adam. Again, you have been very tuned in to the Broncos for a long, long time. How many years, if you had to put a number on it, how many years do you think Peyton Manning plays?
I think he plays out his contract. I mean, I think I don't think age is going to stop him. I think it's just
3 more years.
Keep playing. Yeah, I think it's just a matter if he wants to keep playing. And looking at Peyton Manning, I don't think there's anything that suggests he's ever going to not want to keep playing.
Yeah, thank you. I think that one of the things that's left out of the Peyton Manning scouting report is he's hyper. I mean, like Brett Favre, kind of competitive. Well, Brett Favre was also just fun. Like, I think that with Brett Favre, there was something like, I don't even know whether Brett Favre would know what to do with himself if he wasn't playing football. But Peyton Manning is so competitive that I don't think he's going to just decide, I've got other things I want to do. And he can stay at that high level. And I also think it's absurd in a dynasty fashion. And Adam, I want you to take this and run with it. I mean, people say, well, what about, if you're trading for Cody Latimer, if you're drafting Cody Latimer, well, what about after Payton? Is that something you're thinking about when you're evaluating Cody Latimer's value in dynasty leagues?
No. What about after Payton? 3 years from now, who knows who's going to be starting for anyone anywhere? Maybe Brock Osweiler's great, maybe Brock Osweiler's terrible, maybe Tom Brady's retired, maybe Aaron Rodgers tears his ACL. I think every projection has room for error, and as you're compounding these projections year after year after year, that room for error just gets better and better, bigger and bigger. So I'm a big fan of, if you believe in a guy's talent, bet on his talent, because his talent's not going to change as much as his situation will.
And if you believe in the poor Dallas Cowboys defense, you're going to start Carlos Hyde. He's going to be the king what the heck flex in week 1. Ryan, you took him at 8-10. You took him ahead of Jeremy Hill. Did Hill even enter your mind there, or was Hyde a guy that you had targeted and you were just happy to see him fall to you in the 8th?
All of the above. No, actually, yeah, I definitely thought of Hill. I think Hill's floor is certainly higher, but I think Hyde's ceiling is higher. If Gore were to get hurt, I mean, Hyde is probably going to be, better than Gore would have been with Gore's workload. So why not take him on the run-first team on an offense that should probably be, pretty open this year? So I went with him and decided that he was the better pick.
So we see, and we saw, by the way, Adam follows my rookie wide receiver pick with a rookie wide receiver pick of his own, Jordan Matthews. Adam, anything you want to say about that pick? Oh, wait. He was stepped away. Sorry. I didn't notice that. Let me go back to Jeff. Jeff, you just went for a double dip, and you got Dwayne Bowe, D Show, and you sneaky, you get Tyler Eifert. Nice pick.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Eifert's one of those guys who, I think he could.
Oh, did we lose Jeff?
Maybe.
Looks like we're stressing out the Google Hangout. There you go.
Marvin Jones. So I think Eifert's going to really take a step forward this year. Exactly how much, that's yet to be determined. But I've got Heath Miller already as my primary tight end, and Eifert's just kind of a secondary guy who doesn't share the same bye week, who has some upside. So I like that pick there. And then the other pick I had was Dwayne Bowe, and that's a David Dodds pick. He'd take him there if he was. You would take him if he was there. So sure, he misses the first week, but he looked pretty decent against Carolina in the preseason. They were going to him often. So I mean, if that continues, I'll be happy with that.
Okay, Ryan's on the clock here. Ryan, do you have a name automatically in your head, or are you deliberating?
No, I do. I'm about to pick Nick Foles here. A wise man once said that if you buy Nick Foles, you're buying Chip Kelly. So so why not take him? And I'm also very excited to tell people that both Cody Latimer and Carlos Hyde went before Nick Foles at a draft, and I have Nick Foles. I was going to take him with the 8th pick, but I happened to look at all the guys between me, which were Bob McGaw, Bob Henry, Jeff, and Jason Wood, and they all had quarterbacks already. So I decided I would wait on Foles and use a little strategy there and pick him after or on my second turn there. So glad he fell.
Oh yeah, and I mean I can't feign being that frustrated with. Well, there goes Kaepernick, and the beautiful thing is, so as you said, you could time this, and this was always part of my plan. That's why I took Latimer in the 8th round, because I looked at the number of quarterbacks left, the ones I could be okay with, and who I would take here. And again, the distance touchdown bonus in a distance touchdown bonus league, in a league with 300-yard bonuses. When you're drafting Jay Cutler, you're drafting Alshon Jeffrey and Brandon Marshall too, and Santonio Holmes and Martellus Bennett and Mark Trestman. So I see if you draft Nick Foles, you're drafting Chip Kelly, and I raise you if you draft Jay Cutler, you're drafting Mark Trestman.
That's a fair point, and you'll remember that I already have 2 of Jay Cutler's players on my
So
team.
we're going to cancel each other out. And I mean, I thought about Foles. I really like Foles this year because I mean, obviously the Foles Kelly thing, but in a league where longer touchdowns and bigger individual games are weighted, I worry that, and this is splitting hairs, but that's what we do in fantasy drafts, that maybe Nick Foles isn't going to have as many 300-yard games. Without Deshaun Jackson, maybe he's not going to have as many long touchdowns, but I know Nick Foles is going to still be putting up some numbers. They're both tremendous picks in the 9th round. I mean, that's the beautiful thing. Go ahead.
And the quarterback run has officially begun.
Yep, it's get him while smoke him if you got him. And we had 4 teams left that didn't have a quarterback, and now we've seen them go bang, 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 bang. The only one of the top 16 left, I think, at this point is Roethlisberger. So and Philip Rivers go. Oh, and no, Romo and Rivers went right after Cutler.
Romo hadn't shown up yet.
I also have RG3 still.
Oh, that's right, RG3. So and Cam Newton. I'm sorry, I completely forget about RG3 and Cam Newton because these are the guys whose stock is falling. These are the guys who are, and I really do think that RG3 is going to be a good buy low early in the season because of the draw of Houston. Now Matt Waldman is on the clock. Let's see who's got a little while before they pick. I guess. What I'm curious about here is where these last few quarterbacks go, as we're rounding the turn here, almost to the 10th round.
There's only one team without a quarterback, and that's Chase.
Right,
and
and
so probably he knows that, so he's going to wait till his turn again on the back turn to probably grab.
So do we conspire? Do we conspire to just because it's Chase? Because Chase just said, "Please tell me, Matt, what quarterback would not be a banker or lawyer pick? My team is so stacked, it doesn't matter what I do."
Tell him Geno Smith.
There you go. Rex Ryan special right there.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I'll tell him.
I like Adam with the location change, but he still brings the heat.
There you go. There you go. So.
Do you think he'll take Cam, or do you think he'll take Griffin?
I don't know. I know that I mean, I would think that. I mean, this format is brutal for Cam. Although I say that as someone who took Kelvin Benjamin.
I think Chase is a closet Panthers fan. Honestly, that's like maybe his second team. So I wouldn't be surprised if he takes Cam Newton.
Well, he took Antonio Gates here, and what he's trusting here is that we aren't going to try to get some backup quarterbacks out from under him, and it's probably a smart bet. Matt Waldman is on the clock right now. And I guess as we get, it's so funny, guys, because I keep wanting to ask you questions about like what your plans are. We've seen some rookie. I'll ask this: we've seen a mini rookie running back run. We saw Freeman, Hyde, Hill, and Andre Williams all go off the board within about 10 picks of each other here recently. I guess since Adam is back. Adam, I've actually been very negative on the rookie running backs at their ADP in redrafts. I feel like if you want rookie running backs, the best thing to do is going to be to try to trade for them in a month because everyone's going to say, "Oh, that's all I got." But am I too I'm not usually pessimistic here. It's weird for me to be pessimistic. Do you think my pessimism is well founded?
Yeah, I think the rookie running backs are a big reason why I opened with running backs with 4 of my first 6 picks, because I think you got to get them early. And I think after that, I mean, you look at the 6th round, you're getting 6th, 7th turn, you're getting no Sean Moreno.
Guys on my team.
Richardson. Now you're into Carlos Hyde, Jeremy Hill, Andre Williams.
Right.
I wanted no part of that landmine.
Well, and if you're looking at like what the possibility that Andre Williams will start for your team versus Dwayne Bowe or Tyler Eifert or Marcus Wheaton or the quarterbacks, again, like the picks, Chris Ivory went in the 9th round, Jonathan Stewart went in the 9th round. These are guys going in the 14th, 15th round of typical 12-team drafts. So I think you were absolutely right to anticipate that, and it's played out the way you thought it would.
And just to let you guys know, Ray Rice and Pierre Thomas are my number 3 and number 4 guys. So when you need some help,
the trade desk is open. The trade desk is open for business already.
I won't gouge you too badly.
You heard it. Okay, you know what, guys? We've been doing this for about 2 hours, and Chase says sounds good to Geno Smith. By the way, sounds good. He's going to draft it's Geno Smith and win a championship with Geno Smith just to show us that he can. Guys, we've been doing this since 9 Eastern. I think 2 hours is good, and you all have been very, very excellent to share your thoughts and your time with everybody. And I guess we can just kind of go around and as a parting shot, and we'll update this on the Audible how this league is going. It's been fun to have to share this with y'all, and it'll be out there on the YouTube channel. And by the way, also remember Daily Fantasy Sports if you haven't checked that out yet. FanDuel, the only place to go. $25 entry in $1 million prize pool for week 1, including $100,000 prize. We've got the Football Guys FanDuel Championship where you compete against Joe and David and myself, and you can make the big money in week 11 if you hang on there. There's an iPhone app. There's all kinds of good stuff going on with FanDuel. And Football Guys Players Championship. I think you might still be able to get it right under the gun. $350 to win $300,000. But I just want to pass this around and just thoughts on how your draft has gone so far. And I guess we'll go in opposite order since Matt Waldman's about to be up. And Jeff Hazley, you're the farthest away from the clock. So just how do you feel about how your draft's gone so far as we're going to be signing out here?
Well, number one, I think I've got a pretty strong core with Drew Brees, LaShawn McCoy, and Andre Ellington as my first 3 picks. And then I waited to take receiver, my first receiver in the 4th round. I've got 4 receivers that I'm somewhat confident with Edelman, Ruben Randall, Dwayne Bowe, who was a nice get, and then Justin Hunter. That's not a bad group. I think I've got a team that can compete, but it needs to have some of these upside players really kind of hit in order for me to really make some noise.
Ruben Randall and Hunter will both be big players. Like the barometer of how your team does. I guess that's a good way to frame the question. And next furthest from the clock is Ryan Hester. Ryan, give just first glance. Who are a couple of your barometer players? Who are the players you say I know if this player does well? And there goes Matt Waldman takes Cam Newton.
Yeah, good job, Matt.
Yoink. Well done. Maybe we put the QB squeeze on Chase yet. I don't know. We'll see. But he takes him right in front of Chase. But Ryan, who are a couple of your barometer players as we're 9 rounds plus into this?
Well, as you guys were talking earlier about running backs, I guess I did get a little bit jealous of Adam, but hopefully he'll be jealous. Hopefully he'll be jealous of my wide receivers, because I've got Michael Floyd, and Eric Decker, who I drafted 3rd and 4th among receivers. I think they can both be, wide receiver 2s in any league this year, if I hit their upside. So I'd say Decker is probably that swing player for me, and kind of the X factor is Carlos Hyde. As I said earlier, I swung for the fences with him. Hopefully, he can pan out. And then also Fred Jackson, obviously part of a committee in SIG. I know that as a Spiller owner here, you're hoping this doesn't pan out, but he gets the high value targets in Buffalo. He gets the 3rd downs, the pass catches, and the goal line carries. So that's what I'm looking for with Fred Jackson, and I think he can be a big player for me too, undervalued.
Yeah, he's
Whoa! Chase putting his money where his mouth is, or his money where his mouth is.
Wow!
You
He
should
knew he's not going to win
not,
anyway.
Man,
No
you should
kidding.
not listen to the old man. He just got
he is
trash
toying
talked out.
with
He
us.
got psyched out in this
We're in
draft.
your head, Chase Stewart. We're in your head.
I have set up a Manhattan penthouse in your head, Jason.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness! Look at that. That's a pick of the draft right there, but maybe not necessarily in a positive light.
Actually, I kind of like Geno Smith.
I do
this
too.
year.
I do
So,
too.
Maybe not over RG3 and Roethlisberger, but I love it. We love it.
I think we know who Chase's swing player is now.
Yeah. Well, we also
Yeah.
know, and we also know that they're in those 2 picks. Like I'm staring at my screen right now. It says 10:03, 129 Matt Waldman, Cam Newton, and 10:04, 130 Chase Stewart, Geno Smith. That's like a novel. Like those 2 picks.
And Jason Wood's response is, what?
Come on, you guys know that by now. Adam and I are about to be on the clock. So since your picks are in the books, a player or 2 that are like your barometer players that you feel like, hey, if this pick comes through, I think my team's going to be all right.
I would actually probably say at this point it's my running backs. Really, that's what it hinges on, is whether I'm going to be working hard on the waiver wire and trade wire. If Maurice Jones-Drew or Steven Jackson or Jonathan Stewart play what they're capable of doing, from a couple of years ago, then I have a very strong team. But again, that was a couple of years ago. That's kind of like 15 years past your prime in real work time than corporate world time maybe. So we look at somebody like Jackson, and there's a little bit of risk there with his with the recurrent hamstring issues. But again, they're looking for a red zone player. They want to run the ball a lot. Levine Toilolo, to me, is a guard or a tackle more than he is a tight end. And so if they're going to run the ball a lot and he can stay healthy, looking good. Jonathan Stewart has looked like the Jonathan Stewart at Oregon this year. Now, is that a short-lived mirage? Odds are likely that it is, but I couldn't help it that late. And Maurice Jones-Drew, I am sold on him, and I do think that he's going to be a nice garbage man for me, who's going to be giving me, picking up regularly to get the points. So, I think my team is older. A lot of guys that the shine is kind of worn off on them, but they tend to deliver consistently from a wide receiver standpoint. So I feel like that. This is a team that will score fairly well for me, and I just have to kind of work some deals to maybe to develop an edge. That's what I'm hoping.
And by the way, last year, Matt in our staff draft took 3 Broncos in like the first 6 picks. Like Peyton Manning and Eric Decker and Wes Welker. We're like, wow, okay, sure. And yeah, it ended up being okay. And I do think that your draft you should pick a lane in your draft. You shouldn't be like hedging all kinds of bets in your draft, especially in football guys staff leagues are winner take all. We do have prizes and they are winner take all. So you shouldn't try to just sneak into the playoffs. And on that note, my team is it's just upside plays. Dwayne Allen, Kelvin Benjamin, Cody Latimer. I need Ben Tate and C.J. Spiller to play like 12 or 14 games. I need those guys to be there for me most of the season because otherwise I'm scrounging at running back. But obviously I love my tight end Julius Thomas. I love Des Bryant. Trotting out Des Bryant as a number 1 with high variance upside plays like Torrey Smith, Kelvin Benjamin, and Cody Latimer.
By the way,
does
anybody want a drink? Because I can ask Chase's what is that? What is that part in the back of the brain?
Amygdala.
Yeah. I could ask that where the refrigerator is in this.
Ooh. This is one.
We need some beer, I think, at this point.
We do. That's probably exactly. That's part of the reason that I'm saying it's time to sign off because.
Yeah, but what does he drink? Do you think? What do you think, Chase? What do you think?
Stella Artois.
Yeah.
It's what are the people that were drinking Heineken 20 years ago drinking? I think it's Stella. When I go to New York, it's Stella.
We need to send him to the corner store and get us some malt liquor or something.
Yeah, totally. Have a 40 every 40 days. That's my motto. As I'm waiting for me to get on the clock here, and I do want to give Adam one more chance to talk. As I'm waiting for my pick here. So no, this is fun, and Chase Stewart always keeps it fun. So my sister works in a Manhattan law firm. She gets Stella when we go out, and I might visit her in Manhattan. So waiting for this pick to come in. I guess Adam, we have a little window for you to talk about your swing players, and then we'll bid you all adieu. And I will tweet the link to this out, the completed draft, out on my Twitter for you that are in suspense and wondering what's going to happen. Adam, who are a couple of your barometer players?
My big swing player is the guy I'm going to be taking in the 11th round.
Nice.
But I'm not going to tip him off just yet. I think the big swing for me is going to be that Evans-Matthews combo at wide receiver, and just how quickly the rookies can get up to speed and become an integrated part of that offense. I think as long as one of them winds up playing a pretty decent role, I think especially with my running backs and the ability to play 4 of them a week, I think I'm going to be pretty okay this year. And
you snag RG3 in the 10th round. And I thought about RG3, but I'll give Stephen Ridley, even though Belichick, speaking of being in someone's head, I'm sure Belichick is going to ruin the poor kid's confidence again. But in the 10th round, with only 2 running backs on my roster, I'll take my chances on.
Yeah, I like him.
He's sort of calculated at this point. So good stuff. Good stuff, guys. Thank you so much, Jeff and Adam and Matt and Ryan. It's fun stuff. You know, all of these hangouts are really just about that we get amped about this stuff just like you do. We obsess about it. We think about it first thing in the morning when we wake up, last thing when we fall asleep, and it's fun to share this stuff. As I said, we'll keep this draft updated, this league updated. We'll check in with you guys on the Audible to let you know how it's going as you've gotten to see the genesis of our teams. And it's on. And the funny thing is, like, it's not. I mean, we just keep drawing energy from the season as you're going to be seeing great stuff from all 4 of these guys and all the other great Football Guys writers. Hopefully, you got in and you got your Insider Pro subscription, money back guaranteed through September 30th. So thanks everybody, and please give us feedback. We want to do something on Sunday mornings. So if you guys like what we're doing here with Hangouts, we continually have more interactability, and is that even a word? We have the ability to have more give and take and be there for you guys. So hopefully you're enjoying it. Please feel free to let us know how you think we can use these tools to help you and serve you better, because we're nothing without you guys. And we know that Chase Stewart's team is nothing without Geno Smith. We'll always remember that.
I think Zook brought in a squirrel into his house.
Zook brought in Geno Smith. We're going to see if Zook gets Derek Carr by the end of the week.
He's going to play with them and throw them around a little bit, I think. So, yeah.
Awesome, guys. Well, thanks to everybody, and we'll continue doing this. It's on in 2 days. That is exciting. All right. Thanks, everybody. Have a good one.